end of time.
O'clock.
Hey, you guys, what's going on? And it's Wednesday.
Yep, and a paranormal show. It's going to be a good one.
Everybody seems excited about this.
Yeah, she's giving me a little bit of the lowdown. I don't know the case that well. She knows where this house is when she lived in Wales.
I'm pretty sure I've been in this area, so it's entirely possible that I may have passed this house at some point. Because I know when I was looking at it and they kind of said where it was, like I was like, oh, yeah, I might have passed that or seen it from the road from a mountain road or something like that, because I know pretty much exactly where this is.
But I'm just starting to get a little bit of drink in me and food. I didn't eat all day, man. I worked all fucking day on the car.
He was working on the car all day.
Once I get involved in a project, I don't feel any hunger.
Yeah.
And I got done and I realized I hadn't eaten anything. And I asked Jenny, "You eat anything?" She said, "No."
No, I was reading a book about this. I was reading a book about this. I think I ate a little Debbie.
Yeah.
I was like, and I had a cup of coffee, but that was about it.
Made some ham sandwiches.
Yeah, so we just
I had some whey left over from making cheese. Fucking made a protein drink out of that. Vegetable with fruit smoothie out of that. But I think I might have that car done. It hasn't thrown an engine code.
Not yet.
Nope.
And I'm pretty sure that's probably what the problem was.
Took that intake manifold off there, and there was a crack right there in between where the coolant goes across from one side to the other, and right where one of the air intakes is. There was a break right there, so that engine was sucking coolant, a fine spray of coolant into the engine, which is why I was getting those random misfires. I looked at the inside of that intake manifold, man, and it was fucking nasty. Throttle body was nasty too, just big caked up. So it's been like that for years. That old lady was driving it like that. I put that new intake manifold on there, and all of a sudden that fucking car was fast. Boom, powerful, right off the bottom. Just like a Mustang GT. Basically the same car. Just got to let that ECM learn the new fuel map, because it hasn't breathed clean fuel in a long time. It's going to get that fuel air mixture right. It's going to be good, but it hasn't thrown a code. Only had one thing fucking went wrong. I broke the top of an 8mm bolt off. Got to get a replacement for it. Right where the fucking right where the throttle body is. So it's only on by 3 bolts instead of 1. It'll hold, but I got to get a 4th bolt on there. But other than that, went pretty smooth. Took about 6 hours, maybe a little bit more. And then I did a core flush on the radiator. He didn't have any coolant in there. He was just using fucking. Her husband put water in there, and that water was nothing but just liquid rust. So I flushed the whole core, and then put coolant in it. It'll be good now.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be. You're doing a lot of work on it, but
Yeah, the car's fucking sweet.
it's all good now.
Yeah, that car's fucking sweet.
All good.
Unless we get out there on the freeway, and I took up a 70 out here, but I didn't get to cruise that long. It didn't throw a code. We'll see. Before it was throwing a code pretty quickly. Once you got up to about 60 or 70, it would throw a code. So I think it's okay.
I hope so.
I think it's okay.
I hope so.
I cleaned the fucking gasket surfaces. It didn't call for any fucking RTV or anything. I just ran straight gasket. They had black RTV on there before. That fucking just fell apart. It didn't mean shit. So I'm just gonna go with factory gasket.
Tyler, the guy, said, "Hey everyone, if anybody remembers me, don't worry, I'm alive."
Who's that?
Tyler, the guy. We remember.
It sounds
We
familiar.
remember you.
Yeah.
We remember you. Allison's here. Tammy's here. Zach is here.
They're all
Merlin's
coming
here.
in, okay.
Danny's here. Yeah, Mrs. Evans' Artie party is here. Iris is here. So yeah, it does seem like. And here's the thing. I'm gonna say, honestly, I kind of like true crime shows. Like, if I had to pick between true crime and paranormal, I kind of prefer doing true crime shows. But it does seem like a lot of people really like the paranormal. I like the paranormal ones too, don't get me wrong. But the thing about it is that I feel like we've covered a lot of the really cool paranormal cases. However, I can't remember who it was that recommended this case, because I had never heard of it. Evidently, it seems like there's a lot of, interestingly, there's a lot of podcasts about it. They did There's one. I think the BBC did a kind of a several part podcast thing with like reenactments and shit like that on it, and it was really popular. It was called The Witch Farm, and so this case seems to be a lot better known in the UK than it does in the US, and that needs to change because this case is fascinating. There's a book about it, and actually, if you have Kindle Unlimited, like I do, you can read it for free. If you have that, you can read it on Amazon. So the book is called Testimony, and it's by Mark Chadbourne. And I read most of it. I was like skimming through it like the last couple of days, and it's actually really good. It's really well written. He kind of wrote it the same way that I wrote Mammoth Mountain Poltergeist, where I kind of took all the information and then not made it seem like a novel, but kind of made it read more like a story. Mm-hmm. He kind of did it like that, right, with like interjections of like long quotes from the actual people and stuff. So, but yeah, I found this like a really interesting case, and I'm sure Tom will have a lot of insight about it because some of the stuff that happened in it, I know that you'll have comments about it.
All right. So we call in this case is commonly called in the United States the Welsh Amityville.
The Welsh Amityville.
The Welsh Amityville. Like Amityville, but in Wales.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I've also seen it called Hellfire Farm.
Okay.
Or the Witch Farm.
Yeah.
The name of the house is actually Heol Fanog, which means road to the peak, is I think what that means.
The Welsh Amityville, that's a good American name.
It is, yeah, because everybody knows what Amityville is, and they'll immediately be like, oh, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And there are a couple of things in here, like, I don't think the walls bled or anything like that, but some of the stuff that happened was kind of similar, you know what I mean? So I can see why they're calling it that. But honestly, if even a portion of the shit that happened is true, and some other articles and stuff that I saw about this said the same thing, they're like, then this could conceivably be like the most haunted house in Britain.
Okay.
But it's kind of a thing where the manifestations that we're talking about happened about over a 7-year period in the late 80s to early 1990s. And although people had reported weird shit prior to this, it wasn't to the extent that these people, experienced it. And evidently the person that moved in after them has lived there for 25 years and hasn't had a single thing happen. So I'm not really sure. I mean, now, to be fair, they have had this house exorcised. I don't even know what the total was, but that was another thing. They said this house has been exorcised more than any other house in Britain. Like, literally hundreds of times. So that might have helped, I guess. Because I think even before the family decided they'd had enough and were going to leave, I think that the manifestations had started to diminish somewhat before they left. But they did leave in, I believe, 1996. And the dad, Bill, has since died. But the mom, Liz, is still alive, and the kids are still alive. And there's a lot of articles where she's talking about it. And actually, there was even... they went to the press while it was going on, because I found some articles like from 1995 when they were still living there, and they were talking about what was going on. So I don't know. Like I said, I'm a skeptic about all this kind of stuff, and so all of this stuff could just be complete bullshit. But I mean, they seemed like nice people. They didn't really seem to get anything out of this. I mean, there was a book written about it, but I don't know how much money they got for that or anything like that.
There is paranormal stuff. I've seen it. Jen's seen it too. It's just that there's a big market in hoaxing and faking it.
Right.
And sometimes, if the hunting isn't all that good, doesn't stand out of the crowd, they'll fucking ramp something up. That's what the Warrens were all about.
Yeah.
I think the Warrens were on a few paranormal cases that were real, but I think a lot of them were fucking fake.
Thankfully, the Warrens were not involved in this one that I know of.
Yeah, or they got involved in a real case and then faked extra shit on top of it.
Yeah, so they would make the book better.
Yeah.
High Desert said I read about this place in 40 Times. Yeah, I read that article as well, and that's where I got a lot of the stuff about like the history of the house and Bill's history, which, and I got some of that from the book I read too, Testimony, which, man, the dude, like the dad that moved into this house, wow, what a crazy life this dude had. It kind of becomes relevant later on because it's like some crazy shit he got involved in, like when he was younger and stuff like that. And some people have speculated that maybe that might have gone some way toward like causing the phenomena. I'm not really sure. Tyler, the guy said, pretty sure Amityville was just a hoax created by a family desperate to get out of debt. I kind of agree with you on that. I always kind of thought Amityville, they just made it up. You know what I mean? Because they
just wanted to make a book.
Well, yeah, and the thing about Amityville in particular was that everybody knew that there had been a mass murder that took place in that house. That's true. That did happen. And it was a huge case, and so everybody knew about it. So if you're going to be the next people to move into the house, I mean, why wouldn't you take that opportunity to be like, ooh, shit, it's haunted, you know? Because something horrible did happen there.
The problem with Amityville is that it doesn't fit any of the known patterns for phenomenon. It's not haunting. It's not poltergeist. It's not possession. It's kind of got elements of them all. But that's just because they were just picking and choosing.
Shit that they liked. That sounded that would sound the best in a book, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, I think I definitely do. We did a show about Amityville like a long time ago. We have not done a show about the DeFeo case. I have put that in a poll that's either going up this week or next week. So if you want us to do a show on that, go over there and vote if you're on Patreon or if you're a YouTube member. But we have done a thing about Amityville, and I'm pretty sure we did come to the conclusion that it was largely faked. Either that or a couple little bullshit paranormal things happened and they just blew it into this big thing.
DeFeo was the Amityville horror. He was
like I said, that really happened.
Just running around killing people, yeah.
He killed his whole family.
He
killed his whole family.
Yeah, he was the horror of Amityville.
So, but like I said, this house here, which we'll get into. Now, there is some kind of stuff about the land. There has been a lot of rumors about the land where this house is. You know what I mean? Stuff about witchcraft and ley lines and all that kind of stuff. So, well, and that goes back like a really long time. So we'll kind of get into that too when we get toward the end about what they thought was maybe causing it. But so let's talk about, we don't have anything else to, we don't have any other housekeeping to do, do we? Do we?
Yes, I got the scan tool.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much,
Yeah,
Brian, for sending that.
Yeah, and I used it to pull some codes. I'm going to keep that in the glove box.
That is very handy.
Testing it, yeah, so I can pull the code in case it come up. So I can do it. What else is going on? That's about it.
Yeah. I mean, Tom's just been working on the car, and I've just been working on this show all day, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I'm also working on, and I'm not sure when it's going to go. I'll probably put it up on Sunday. But I'm also working on a new video for my Crime Immemorial channel, which is going to be about Dr. No, the serial killer. Who they're not sure if they know who he is or not, but there's some possibilities. So I'm working on the script and everything now, and then that's going to go up. And then I have a book review going up on Friday, too. For a book that's coming out next Friday. Like, he sent me the book a long time ago. The author sent it to me, like, for an ARC. And but he said, well, don't put the review up until, like, a week before the book goes up, because I want all the reviews coming out, like, the week before. So I was like, okay, I'll put it up on Friday then. But it's done. All right, so let's talk about this house, as I said, called Heol Fanog. So so the thing about that, I mentioned this house called Witch Farm, Hellfire Farm. I think Hellfire Farm is the most common name, but I think that's kind of a dumb name, but whatever. So the whole thing started in May of 1989. And there's a couple named Liz and Bill Rich. So whenever I say the Rich family, I don't mean they're rich, they had a lot of money. Rich was their last name. And they moved into this house in May of 1989. Now, at the time they moved in, Bill was 43 years old and Liz was 30. And they moved in with Bill's 14-year-old son, Lawrence, from his previous marriage. Now, he had previously been married to this woman named Denise. I believe they'd been married for 16 years. But she had what was termed a very public affair, meaning I guess everybody knew about it. So it was like super embarrassing. And then she ended up leaving him. And so it was like a big thing. And so when he met Liz, who he actually went to, she was like an herbalist or something like that. And she was 13 years younger than him. And they, very quickly got into a relationship and everything like that. Now, at the time that they moved into this house, they were very excited to find this because they liked how, it's very remote. In this area where they are, within like several square miles, there's literally 5 houses. That's it. Where the house is, if you've ever been to Wales, I've actually been in this area. I have a picture of me somewhere standing at the base of these mountains, and they're all covered with snow and stuff. It's like right at the edge of the Brecon Beacons, and just kind of out in the middle of nowhere. Like if you take, there's a town called Brecon, and you kind of take like the last road and go all the way up, and then there's like this little road, and then it just goes up to this house. So it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. But that's what they were looking for. Now this house, they rented it, but it was super cheap. It was like way cheaper than many of the other houses in the area, because in Wales and the UK in general, like the Brecon Beacons is a big like tourist area. Like a lot of people have vacation homes there and stuff, like, because it's beautiful. The landscape is like gorgeous. So it was very unusual to find a house this size for this price. I believe it was only £50 a week in 1989, which was something like a tenth of the price of something comparable. You know what I mean? So they moved into this house in May, and in September, they got married. Now, everything seemed fine at first. Like I said, this is a new blended family. There's a teenage boy in the mix. Him and his stepmother, they seemed to get along. They said it was more like a kid and his older sister kind of relationship than a mom. And Bill, the dad, he said he tried really hard to not make the kid feel like Liz was like was replacing his mom. You know what I mean? Like, so, but there was a little bit of tension there for that. And there had been some, like, Liz had some, she was kind of a wild child, like, growing up, and she was just getting over, like, being a drug addict, and she had real bad eating disorders and all this other kind of stuff. And that was kind of how she ended up getting into, I want to say, like, new agey, homeopathy, that kind of stuff, because that was what got her out of it, evidently. So there was that. Now, so like I said, she was an herbalist, but I think when they moved out to the country, I don't think she worked anymore. She just took care of kids, because when they first moved to the house, she was pregnant, and this was the first kid that her and Bill were going to have together, because like I said, the son from before was from his previous marriage. Now Bill was not Welsh, Liz was, but well, she's still alive. Bill was English, and he was an artist, and evidently he was an artist of some renown. He was a painter, and so he made like quite a bit of money doing that. Like he had gallery shows, and like some dukes and royalty and stuff like had some of his paintings. How he made most of his money was like on the gift market. He hand painted like wooden trunks and like things like that, you know what I mean, like luxury items. And he apparently made a shit ton of money doing that, because in the book he was saying it's like, oh, he had all this money in the bank, they didn't have to worry about it, and all this other kind of stuff. So he was making a fuck ton of money, and he had tons and tons of orders. So one of the reasons they wanted this farmhouse was because it had this real big, like 40 square foot, like 40 foot room that he was going to use for a studio. And he had never had that before, and it had room for all of his stuff, and he was like super excited about it. So that was one of the main things that they wanted. And like I said, they kind of wanted the farm life. They bought pigs, they bought goats, they did the whole thing. You know what I mean? That's kind of what they were all doing. Now, they said, interestingly, they had come and look at the house a few times, and they just fell in love with it. They thought it was gorgeous. And they said when they first got onto the property, they felt like, they said it felt like they were walking into a bubble, but not in a bad way. They said it almost felt like the house was like protecting them. Like you were walking into this bubble of safety where like nothing bad would happen. And they felt that for like the first few months because they just thought this was the most idyllic like place ever, and they just thought it was amazing. But I thought that was kind of interesting in light of what you always said about Mammoth Mountain, where you walked in and felt this. And a lot of people say when they walk into a haunted house, they feel that oppression.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But they said it was a feeling, but it was the opposite. Like it made them feel like really good, like they were protected and isolated.
As soon as we walked in there, like as soon as you went through the doorway, through the threshold, walk in there, you're like, ooh. No way to describe it. It's just like, ugh.
Yeah.
Not good. Like something watching you.
Yeah. Which, I mean, these people got that later.
Right.
But they said even when they came to just look at the house before they moved in, they're like, there was just magical feeling when you came on the property that like everything was like it was your own magical little world. Huh. You know what I mean? Like you were in a bubble. Yeah. And they both felt that like independently, they said. So they move into the house. And everything seemed amazing and incredible for the first few months. I think the first thing that happened didn't happen until November. They moved in May of 1989. Now, I will note that in October, their baby was born, Ben. And none of the articles I read said this, but in the book, Liz said that when Ben was born, he had, I can't remember the name of the disorder, but it's when the baby's born and pretty much all his organs are on the outside, like turned inside out. And they didn't think the kid was going to make it, but he did, against all odds. They also said something was wrong with his toe, like he had some kind of necrosis or something like that, and they said we're going to have to amputate his foot. But she claimed that she did, herbalist kind of healing on him, and it turned out fine. So I'm not really sure about all that, but that's what she said. So, so you have to think her baby's born in October. It's having all these medical problems. They didn't think the kid was going to make it, but the kid pulled through and everything like that. And then the paranormal activity starts like a month later, like in November. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So the first thing that happened was that it's the middle of the night. Bill gets up to go to the bathroom. And Liz is up. She gets, because it's a baby. She has a baby, so you have to get up like every couple hours and feed them or whatever. And so he's down in the bathroom, and I think the bathroom is downstairs. And he thought he heard what he called crashing footsteps coming from the floor above him. And he's like, and this wasn't just like footsteps. It was like somebody very deliberately like crashing around like in big heavy boots, like really loud. And at first he thought that it was his son Lawrence, because what had happened, and they detailed this in the book, was that I guess him and Liz had been having sex, and this was, I guess, the first time they had done this, like with Lawrence in the house too, and they're like, oh shit, what if he heard it? You know what I mean? Because they, maybe the sound carries and stuff, and they were trying to like not put all of it up in Lawrence's face, that it's like this is like a new relationship, because like I said, he was real sensitive about not having his mom replaced. So the first thing that Bill thought was that, my son did hear it, and now he's being passive aggressive and mad, and he's stomping around all over the floor. Uh-huh. That's what he thought. So he goes back upstairs and he kind of creeps in his son's room, but his son, of course, is fast asleep. And then he goes back into his room and says, what was all that racket? You know what I mean? It's like, I thought it was Lawrence. And Liz is like, what are you talking about? I didn't hear anything. She didn't hear anything at all. And the baby was not disturbed, like, in any way. So he was the only one that heard it. But he said it was really, really loud. But then, not too long after that, pretty much the next day, I believe it was, they both started hearing things. One of the first things that Liz saw, she was in the nursery, I guess, and she was putting the baby down for a nap or whatever, and she very distinctly heard the doors slamming all the way down the hall. Like, that one down the hall, bam, bam, and then the next one did the same thing. And then the door of the room she was in did it, but she's very adamant. She's like, but the door didn't move. It was just the sound. Huh. And she heard it coming all the way down the hall. And again, she at first thought it was Lawrence or her husband, but they were like, no, it wasn't us. We didn't do that. And then Bill and Liz, they were sitting at the table, like in the afternoon or whatever, and they both again heard footsteps like running through the house and coming down the stairs. They said one of the things that they heard was that the footsteps, and they heard this more than once, you could very distinctly hear them coming down the stairs, like 1 step, 2 step, 3 step. And it's like, and you turn around because you would expect to see a person. And then you turn around, but of course there was nobody there. And then they said that the footsteps would go back up the stairs, like it almost like it was aware that there was somebody down there looking, and so it was running back up the stairs. You know what I mean?
And they were looking, they couldn't see anything.
And there was nothing there, right? So they said they heard that a lot too, and it wasn't just heavy footsteps. They said sometimes you'd hear like shuffly footsteps, like somebody with slippers on. They said they heard that a lot too, like just kind of walking around. So that was like pretty common. And then only a few days, I think, after moving into the house, they get their first electric bill. And they were expecting something along the lines, I guess their electric bill, the company was called Swalic, which I guess is South Wales Electric. That's what I assumed. But they were expecting something like £100, like they pay it quarterly. So they opened the bill, and Bill just about shits his pants because it's £750. He's like, I could power a whole city for that, like for a quarter. What are you talking about? There is absolutely no way. He's like, we had a fridge, a TV, some lamps. That's it. He's like, we had a gas stove. We had, so it was like, there's just no possible way. So £750 for 3 months. And he's just like, that's ridiculous. There's just no way that it could be that much. He's like, I could power a whole town for that. That would be about £2,000 of today's money, which for like 3 months, which no way. So he calls up, it was the weekend when he got that. So he calls Monday and he's like, what the fuck? He's like, I'm not paying this. And they were like, oh, well, somebody came out and read the meter and it's correct. That's correct. And he's just like, there's absolutely no way. So this was one thing. And a lot of people that talk about this case talk about, well, this is actually one of the things that makes them believe it more, because there is actual documentation of them constantly calling the power company and people from the power company coming out and trying to figure out why the meter kept running, because the meter would just spin and spin and spin. Yeah. And it's like, and they would come out and like he would turn everything off in the house, but it was still going, and they couldn't figure out where the power drain was coming from.
Were they making him pay all that?
I think what ended up happening, because I think he sued them at some point, because they were like, look, it's not a mistake on our end, so you're responsible for it. And so he was just constantly arguing with them, and he didn't want to pay it. And I think that in the end, I think they allowed him to do like a payment plan, or they agreed to like knock it down some. Right. But from what I read, because they lived there for like 6 or 7 years, that it was just like a constant back and forth. They weren't all that high, but they were all up in the 500+ pound range.
And it never laxed up?
Only a few times after they came. I think sometimes like after, we'll get to it, but after like the kid got sent away for whatever reason, and then sometimes when they had exorcisms or they had like people out there doing cleansings, like sometimes it would go down to normal, but then it would go back up again.
Weird.
So yeah, so he's just like a few days. They were only in the house for a few days, and they get the power bill, and he's like, "There's just no fucking way."
Makes you wonder if it's draining the power or if it's just spinning the meter faster to spite him.
Yeah, maybe.
You know what I mean?
But yeah,
the electricity has to go somewhere.
Yeah, and he said that
Someone has to be drawing it.
That every single thing had been checked. They're like, the technicians came out and checked the meter. They came out and checked every single appliance. They came out and checked everything, because he's like, well, could somebody else be like fobbing off my electricity like without me knowing about it? And they're just like, no, we checked for that. It's not that.
What was their explanation of where it was going?
They didn't know. All they know was, well, that's what the meter says, so you're responsible for it, because we can't find an explanation. We can't find anything wrong.
I'd assume him just to get.
I think he did try to sue them later. I don't know how it went though.
Is that something's wrong somewhere?
Yeah.
Electricity's going to ground somehow.
Yeah, I mean, this is crazy.
Yeah, but some kind of grounding problem.
Tyler says the electricity bill was high because it was the ghost of Thomas Edison. Yeah, what a dick.
Yeah.
Allison said, is anyone else experiencing technical difficulties, or is it just me?
Just you, because my shit's good here.
Yeah, I think everybody said it was fine. Oh, okay. She's like, I exited and came back. It's working fine now. Okay, that's good. That's good. But yeah, so that was that whole thing. Now, as an aside, this was also a common thing that happened. The battery of their car would often be drained with no explanation. And the electrical systems of their car were often going on the fritz. Sometimes so much so that they had to like fucking buy a new car. Do you know what I mean? And that happened multiple times. That their cars would just be drained. You know what I mean? So it was some kind of electrical something is kind of what they're saying. Which I guess a lot of paranormal cases say that, don't they? Because like a lot of ghost hunters and stuff will say like it drains their batteries. And
that was them Lucas Electrics. Is what it is. You need to put a Ford down in there. It'd be all right. We know all about Lucas Electrics.
Yeah. Is that what it is?
Yeah, notoriously bad, especially during the 70s. I think they got better. They're better now,
but I don't know. Something's draining all their shit, like their car batteries and all their appliances and everything like that. So not too long after this, Liz and Bill, this doesn't seem to be like an episode of The Haunting kind of situation where only one of them was seeing shit and the other one was like, what, you're crazy, you know what I mean? Both of them, like Bill actually heard the thing first and Liz didn't hear it, but then like literally I think the next day they both heard the shit. And even though Bill was a skeptic, Liz not so much, but they both pretty much came to the conclusion at the same time that yeah, something weird is going on in here. Like, they didn't know what was going on, obviously, but it wasn't a case of, one of them was seeing all the shit and the other one didn't believe it. You know what I mean? They were both seeing stuff. And so Liz and Bill both started sensing a presence. They said at first, it basically just felt like you'd go in a room and you couldn't see anything, but it felt like somebody was standing in the corner glaring at you, like it didn't want you there. And they're like, and it was very pronounced, like that feeling. And both of them felt that. And actually Liz, when she was on TV in 2018, and she said it felt like something was watching you the whole time, and that feeling is even more frightening than seeing things. She said, if something is watching you, then you have to assume its next move is to do something. And a sense of raw panic would come over me. It's like I knew something was going to happen. So there was just kind of like, they said there was just this constant feeling of dread because so I thought you could relate to that. That they just felt like something was going to happen at all times and they weren't really sure what it was. Now, as the months went on, and like I said, they were starting to get really bummed out because, for the first couple months they'd lived here, everything was awesome. And they were just kind of like, oh my God, this is the best place ever. And we're starting our lives over and blah, the whole thing. And then all of a sudden, like everything started going to shit. One thing too that happened not too long after they moved in was that all of Bill's commissions dried up. Like all his
money stopped.
Yeah, well, like all of because he had all of these standing orders, because like I said, he did paintings. That was kind of his, but that wasn't his main income. His main income was like painting the gift stuff that he was doing, and he made a lot of money doing that. And he had all these standing orders for all these companies to do all this stuff, and he always had piles and piles of orders, like more than he could do. And both of his main clients backed out at the same time without explaining why. Which they thought was very unusual. It was just like kind of that kind of shit was happening, and he started thinking he was cursed, you know what I mean?
You ever get down the bottom of it?
No, not that I know of. But yeah, so money problems started to come to the fore too, because, before they'd had plenty of money, and now it was just getting to a point where they didn't have that much anymore. Now, they had, like I said, they started hearing like all of these really loud footsteps or the quiet, whispery, weird, slippery footsteps all the time. Another thing they reported was hearing really loud snoring. They said what sounded like snoring. Liz said at first she heard it and she thought it was the cat, because they had a cat. They had a bunch of pets, but she's like, then she realized that it was like coming from outside the window. Like, and what, you know what I mean? And she's like, and there was no way it could have been a cat. It sounded like some big, huge thing, like snoring. They also, on several occasions, heard other phantom sounds, like they heard a piano playing from Bill's studio. He did have a piano in there, but there wasn't anything in there that would have played the piano, you know what I mean? Also, I believe they heard, like, weird, heavy breathing sounds coming from, like, under the bed and stuff. Another common thing was cold spots, which are, again, like I said, that happens a lot in these. They said they'd have these actually, it wasn't just cold spots. They said it was like wild temperature variations, like within a couple of minutes. Like, they're like, you would be freezing your ass off 1 second, and then like the room would be fucking sweltering the next. You know what I mean? Like one time Liz said she was in the kitchen and she said it felt like a fucking foundry in there. It was like, it was super, super hot. And then after you'd have these temperature fluctuations, then there'd be like phantom smells. They said the most common one was sulfur, and it was just really, really, really strong, so much so that you wanted to gag. But then there was also incense. That was another one that they smelled all the time, and that was also really powerful, like really cloying. Like, and they smelled that all the time too.
Now, how long have they been here at this point?
This is all happening like probably like in the first year.
Okay.
Like, I think the worst part of it, well, it was bad like the whole time pretty much. But according to what Bill said, this is what I gathered. Like, the worst part of it was like late 89 to like through 1990. So it was like, so it was only like, so it was like a year after.
So they've been here about a year. Is the phenomenon happening just solid, or is it just come and go a couple times a week?
It started out, I think, like I said, from what I could gather, it seems like it started out pretty solid. Like, stuff was happening like pretty much every day. But then, because I think, like, people asked them, it's like, well, why didn't you move out or something? They had a lot of reasons why they couldn't. But they said, well, you have to understand that, you know, after a little while, one, you kind of get used to it. And two, it's just like, sometimes it didn't happen every day. Like, sometimes, like, all this fucked up shit would happen, but then it would be, like, 2 weeks and nothing would happen. Okay. You know what I mean? So it's just like, and you're like, oh, it's gone. It's fine. You know what I mean? So it was that kind of thing. But at the very beginning, like, in the first year they were there, it seemed like it was pretty constant, like, at least from what they were describing. Because, yeah, like I said, they lived there a couple months and nothing happened, like, from May to November. But after the shit kicked off in November, it seemed like it was pretty constant after that. Also, like I said, they had a bunch of pets. They had a dog, they had a cat, they had a guinea pig. Lawrence had a guinea pig. And then they had some farm animals. Like I said, they had goats, they had a pig, they had stuff like the pig would come inside the house and stuff. And all of the animals, like right around the same time, either started coming down with mysterious illnesses or started acting crazy, like rabid or something. But not rabid, but, you know, just acting crazy. Like the pig that they had, I wish I could remember what the pig's name was, because it had 3 names, but it was like really funny, but I can't remember what it was. I should have written it down. But so the pig they had, who, like I said, was more like a dog. It would come in the house and lay by the fireplace and stuff. And she was out in her pen one night and started, like, screaming its head off. Like, you know, squealing and everything. And so Bill goes out there to see what the problem is, and the pig started, like, attacking him, like, biting him and shit like that, which the pig had never done before, obviously. They said it was acting so viciously that that they had to put the pig down, unfortunately.
Wow, what happened to that pig?
Yeah, and they said all the animals were kind of acting crazy. They had a couple sheep, too, that were... They said the animals either started acting crazy or they got weird illnesses, or they ran away, like, or they disappeared. You know what I mean? And the weird thing about it is that... So there was a vet that had to come out, like, to put some of the animals down and whatnot. And he said, yeah, it's not just you guys. Like, the farms all around here... Like, you know, some of the sheep and goats and stuff like that have been giving birth to, like, deformed babies, and, like, all this crazy shit was going on just in this little area, you know what I mean? Like, this was right around early 1990 when this was happening. So, and some of the other farmers in the area, from what I could gather, there had been rumors about this farm, like, for a while. So I think when that shit started happening, they were like, oh, that place is popping off again. It was that kind of shit, you know what I mean? So, because they knew what was up. So the family, they had a couple more kids, while they were living there. So, like I said, Liz was pregnant when they moved in, and she had that baby, Ben, who, like I said, he was born with all his guts on the outside, but they fixed him. He was fine. And then in 1990, they had a daughter named Rebecca, or Becca. Now, eventually, like 4 years later in 1994, they had a third kid whose name was Tomas, but you don't really hear anything about him. So I talked about the bedroom door thing before. I put that in a different place. Now, some people thought that a lot of the I don't know. I kind of feel like I was reading one thing that said, it's a lot of the activity seemed to focus on Liz, so people thought maybe it was a poltergeist and she was the focus. But to me, at least from what I read of the book and like all the articles and stuff I read about it, it seemed like pretty I don't know, it seemed like half and half. It kind of seemed like they were both experiencing a lot of shit. Now, keep in mind that if this was indeed poltergeist, which I don't know if that's what it was, but Lawrence was 14 and was going through some shit at this point because of the divorce and everything like that. So it's possible that he might have been the focus, but we'll get into like what happened with Lawrence like later on.
Doesn't sound like any objects are moving though in poltergeist.
Not really. It's more sounds and just weird shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Poltergeist often starts with just sounds, but usually it ramps up into moving objects pretty quickly. Making patterns and stacking objects and making shapes on the ground out of objects and doing impossible things quickly.
Yeah.
I don't know. Doesn't really sound like poltergeist. Maybe.
Tyler said, I love the idea of a ghost being petty like that. It won't hurt you, but it'll sure as shit run up your bills. Well, I mean, because doing that is going to stress you out. And stress, like, I guess, feeds it, I suppose. So maybe that's the end game.
Oscar was asking if we're going to watch...
Oh, Late Night with the Devil? I want to see that, actually. It looks really good.
What is that? Is that a movie?
Yeah, it's a movie. So I might, because, like, yeah, I've been seeing, like, a lot of people talking about that. And I'm like, ooh, that looks really good. So, yeah, I might want to see. There's a lot of new movies coming out that I want to see. Or that have just come out. You know what I mean? So, there's also an incident where Liz was in the bathtub and she got pushed under the water by, unseen hands, I guess. Which kind of reminded me of that case where the woman got wrapped up in the shower curtain. You know what I mean? The funeral home one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it pushed her down in the bathtub and tried to drown her.
Were there any witnesses?
Well, I don't know, but that's what she said.
Okay.
I'm just reporting. I don't know. Another thing that started to happen around this time that the kids, when they were a little bit more grown, recalled. Ben and Rebecca, who were the kids' names, they started seeing an old woman sitting in the corner of their playroom. Like they said the lady never said anything, and she didn't look. They're like she just looked sad mostly, and would just kind of like stare at them, like almost like she was watching over them or something like that. Like they never got. The thing about it was that they didn't realize until they were older that wasn't a real person. Because they're like, we were kids, you know what I mean? Right. We didn't know. It's just like we saw this woman sitting there like, oh, well, there's a lady sitting there. Like, they didn't really think anything about it. And it's like we only realized later when we asked our, dad about it or whatever, who was that lady that used to come over and, like, sit in our room? And he's like, what are you talking about? There was no lady, you know what I mean? So, but, I mean, Liz did see the lady, too, later on. But the kids used to see her. Like I said, she didn't seem malevolent. But she kind of looked stern and kind of sad. So there was that. Now, later on, after Liz and I think Bill saw her too, maybe. Well, I know for sure Liz saw her. They actually found out that it very much resembled a woman named Marion Holborn, was I believe her name, who had lived there not in the years just before, but she was not the previous tenant, but the one before that. You know what I mean? I think she was like the landlord's mom, and she had lived in the house. She didn't die in the house. She died of cancer, like in a care home, but she had lived there. And when Liz saw a picture of her later on, she's like, "Oh, that's her." You know what I mean? Like that's the woman that she saw.
It reminds me of a guy I knew in the Army.
Yeah.
He told me a story one time. His name was Shepardson. Shepardson said that he would be a little kid. He'd be sleeping in the same bed with his mom. You know what I mean? He was probably 4 or 5. And one time he wakes up in the middle of the night and sees an old lady sitting in a damn chair next to the bed, and singing and humming and waving. Hey, how you doing? And he goes back and he goes, "Hey, Grandma."
Okay, whatever.
Go
Yeah.
back to sleep, And he told his mom, he says, "I saw Grandma last night." She goes, "No, you didn't." She goes, "Oh yeah, I saw Grandma. She's over there."
It's like the hell I did too.
She was seeing Grandma. He remembers seeing Grandma several times. It was scaring his mom though, because Grandma had been dead.
Right.
He had never seen his grandma, but he remembers it.
I've heard that about like kids seeing relatives that they never met.
Yeah, never met
before.
her. When he got older later on, and he realized how weird it was, but he had been seeing his grandma in the middle of the night, sitting next to sitting in a chair next to the bed.
I have heard of people reporting that. I never saw anything like that.
And she'd be singing, humming and singing.
She's
and
visiting.
waving. Yeah. Yeah, and you, "Hi, Grandma." Shit like that. Weird.
I kind of wish I had that like when I was younger.
Yeah.
But I don't remember ever seeing anything weird like that.
Now, as soon as he realized it was weird, he realized it was weird because he hadn't seen it in a long time. And he realized that there's no way he could have seen that.
Right.
Like he thought it was. By the time he was like 6 or 7, he realized that was weird.
Yeah. I think that was the same situation here because, like I said, I was reading some interviews with Becca, the daughter, and she said we didn't even realize it was strange until we were older. Like we just thought that was a person, like a real person, because she was just sitting there and looked like a real person.
Yeah.
They didn't realize it was a ghost, like or whatever it was. You know what I
Weird.
mean? But yeah.
Yeah, but is it a ghost or is it maybe some kind of a memory in your DNA or something? Maybe something you're born with, some recorded memories. The way maybe animals are born like that and children are born. Because I remember remembering some things that I couldn't have known. I think there was ancestral memories. Like I told my dad when I was a little kid that I asked him, I said, "You remember the time we were on a tractor and the tractor tipped over?" And I was about 5 or 6 when I said that. And he's like, No, we never on a tractor." He's like, "Yeah, the tractor tipped over." Later on, when I got older, my mother told me that spooked him pretty bad because that happened to him and his dad.
Yeah.
That they were on a tractor and it tipped over.
But you remembered it like it happened to you.
Yeah, it was me and him. So maybe it was. Maybe I'd inherited those memories somehow through my dad.
See, that's kind of fascinating.
That they were on a tractor and it fell over.
Is there some possible mechanism by which a memory could be inherited, like a genetic trait?
It is. I think it is with animals and insects, and maybe it is with humans. But then those memories are erased by your own memories.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's kind of why, when you hear about stories about like reincarnation and stuff like that, which I don't really think I believe in, but it's like, usually if kids are talking about my past life and I burned to death and all this other kind of stuff, it's usually before they're about 5 years old.
Yeah.
And then because once they get old enough to like form their own memories, I guess,
right,
it kind of overrides whatever was in there before.
If you're an insect, you don't have time to learn.
Right.
So you have to inherit the
got
memories.
Shit to do. You're only alive for like 24 hours, dude.
Or if you're an animal, you're going to learn some things through your parents, but you have to be born with a bunch of memories. Like horses don't learn how to run; they pop out, and a few hours later they can run.
Yeah.
They didn't learn that, but they remembered it somehow. They were born with that memory of how to run. Well, humans probably the same way, but it's maybe certain traumatic memories or important memories through your ancestors, through your parents. Maybe you do inherit them, but you don't keep them for very long.
Yeah, because maybe they're
replaced.
Not needed, I suppose.
They're not needed as much, and they're replaced by another memory, by real memories. And I can remember it as a kid. That's just a hypothesis,
That's so interesting, man.
I'm thinking it's happening with animals. Why wouldn't it happen with humans?
Yeah, but it's just kind of like because we have, our brains are a lot more complex, and you're taught a lot of things. Like, you know, you stay with your parents until you're 18 or whatever, and you get taught all of these things by culture and stuff, which animals don't have to the same degree. So they need it more than we do. So it's like maybe we still have that ability, like it's, you know,
It's just
some kind of atavism or something, but it's like we don't really need it anymore, so it's not usually
Or
utilized.
it's not as strong.
Right.
It's like a backup.
Yeah. Because we don't usually operate much on instinct, like in our day-to-day life. I don't know if that's true, but...
I don't know. When I was a little kid, I knew when things were scary.
Yeah.
I knew when things were a threat. You didn't have to learn that. You just saw a crab and went, oh, no, fuck no. You know, look at that crab. Look at, oh, shit. It just looks dangerous, you know.
Whereas I looked at a
Spiders,
crab and kind of went, oh, cute, and then also, ooh, delicious.
Yeah. Take me down to the dam.
I was a big seafood kid when I was...
Take me to the beach when I was a little kid. Palos Verdes over there in fucking California. And fucking my dad took me up there on the rocks. I was just a few years old. And I'd see crabs running around going, oh, shit. That's a huge-ass spider. No, you can tell that you don't want that. You know.
It's weird because I kind of feel like, and I've read this in a lot of, you know, like evolutionary biology and stuff like that, where it's like humans have an inherent fear of spiders and snakes and stuff like that, which makes sense when you think about it, but I don't have that. So I guess...
You're not a human.
I guess I'm defective.
You're just weird, yeah.
Yes, yet another way that I'm defective.
You're just weird, yeah.
I just don't have that.
Oh, no. I was...
The only thing, I don't like cockroaches.
Yeah.
But that's because I had like a lot of bad
I'd
experiences
see
with them
people
in
that were
Florida.
scared. I was scared, you know. I'd see people that I thought were scary, you know. I'd have dreams of fucking being attacked by witches and shit, you know, scary women. You know, fucking it was Esmeralda from fucking no,
Oh, she-
yeah. No,
From
who was
Bewitched?
from Samantha's mom.
Oh, yeah.
Esmeralda, right?
I think was that Esmeralda, wasn't her name?
Yeah, and I had a dream she tried to kill me, trying to poison me.
Oh,
I was scared
shit.
to death of her. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think you told me that before.
Yeah. She's walking at me with this damn bottle of poison and trying to give it to me. Yeah.
Oscar's laughing. Tom sees a crab. Oh, no, fuck no.
Oh, hell, fuck no.
Like I said, first thing, I always thought they were kind of cute, but like I said, because I love seafood, I was always kind of like, also I kind of want to eat it. You know what I mean? So there was that also.
I was like 3 or 4, man. Fuck
Yeah.
that.
And I used to go crabbing with my parents too. We used to go and catch them all the time in the traps.
To me, it was just a big spider.
Yeah.
With-
I'm not
with
bothered by
claws.
spiders either. Like I said, I hate cockroaches though.
Yeah.
Fuck cockroaches. But spiders I actually quite like.
Yeah.
Side Quest Hero said they did a study in monkeys showing that phobias can be passed down. Oh yeah, I read about that.
Okay.
They introduced lab monkeys to snakes, and then several generations the babies were born afraid of snakes. Yeah. And I think you can work it the other way too. Like that if you acclimate them to snakes so you make them not afraid of that, I think that also passes down. If I remember correctly.
I don't see her.
Yeah,
She
it's
must be
there.
way up there. Okay. All right. I don't see her comment.
Yeah, it's right there. It's above High Desert Sun.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, High Desert said, I'm going to see Late Night with the Devil this Saturday. Unfortunately, it's at a Regal, which smells like stale popcorn and ass. Don't they all? No, the AMC actually smells pretty good. I don't even know if we have any Regal theaters around here, to be honest.
No, I don't think we do.
They're pretty much all AMCs. Yeah, Tyler, the guy said it's a giant bug with razor sharp claws. Fuck that noise.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't mind them. I think they're kind of cool with their little eyes on stalks and whatnot. I don't know. I think that's kind of neat. But all right. Like I said, I'm defective. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I still not see. Oh, there's these side quests here. Okay,
Yeah.
All right, yeah. Just making sure my shit was working. Go.
Yeah, Tyler said this game series, Assassin's Creed, yeah, I've heard of that. I've never played it, but I've heard of it. Where genetic memory is a huge part of the storyline. Really interesting concept. It really is. It's like, that's something I kind of like to, maybe we should do a show about that, now that I'm thinking about it. I'll have to write that down. So this old woman was only one of several apparitions which were seen at this place. Inside the house and outside, because I think sometimes they saw them like kind of out at the edge of the garden and stuff too. One of the other apparitions that they saw, both Liz and Bill, and I believe the kids might have seen it too, was a hooded shadow dude that didn't have a face. Like they said it was kind of human, but not quite. Like its head was kind of misshapen. You know what I mean? Liz called it menacing, strong, and sure of itself. Like she would see it in the hallway sometime. She said it didn't have a face, but it was in the form of a kind of human. I don't think it was a ghost, but it was something evil, something that had been around for a long, long time. Nobody really got into, I think some of the, because they did bring in clergy and said they weren't particularly religious, but after, like, you know, shit hit the fan and it was getting so bad that they couldn't really deal with it, they were just kind of like anything. They were just trying anything. They're like, sure, all the religions, all the mediums, all the just, sure, sage it, like, do the crystals, rub all everything, just whatever. They were just trying everything, you know what I mean? They were like anything that would work. But there was that. But there wasn't a big thing about demons. I think the main thing, and I think Maurice Grosse ended up saying this too, was that this entity, whatever this was, this faceless thing they kept seeing, was not a demon per se. They thought it was some kind of like ancient Celtic deity or something that somebody had conjured up like a long time ago and didn't put back. It was that kind of thing. They saw this faceless thing like a bunch of times, like walking around the house in the hallway, like in the doorway or whatever, kind of standing at the foot of the bed looking at him. It didn't have a face, but you know what I mean. And that, like, whenever you saw it, it was just kind of like you were just frozen with absolute terror, you know what I mean? And Bill and Liz also had this one thing they said they remembered pretty vividly, was that they were sleeping and then they both woke up because they heard their bedroom door opening. And they looked across the room and they said that there was like a skeleton hand holding the door open, like, or on the knob or whatever. And then the door slammed and then Bill turned the lights on and the hooded guy was standing there. You know what I mean? Like, after he turned the light on. And then they both screamed and they said it disappeared. So, but they said they saw it with the lights on. But after this, I was like, ooh, the skeleton hand. That's a nice detail. I like that. I mean, I wouldn't like that if that really happened. Because that sounds fucking terrifying. But I'm just saying, if it didn't really happen, that's a nice detail. Now, there was another apparition that they also saw on several occasions. And this was a young man. And if this was really a ghost, I have an idea who this might be. But we'll get into that later. A young man who, according to Liz, looked like he'd been in a car accident. They said because half his face, like in his head, was all fucked up, like somebody had bashed it in or something. So they said he was he wasn't, he didn't seem menacing, but he was just like fucked up looking, so he was scary just because of that. And then, like, later on, and I believe Bill was the first one to report this, was that he saw, at first he just saw it in silhouette, but it was this apparition and it was 7 feet tall. And it had like a bird head, kind of like Horus. You know what I mean? Now, interestingly, a few years before they moved to the farmhouse, Bill and Liz and Lawrence had gone to Egypt because Bill had always wanted to go. And so they went there and they went into the pyramid of Cheops. And Liz went in there. They're in there in the tomb or whatever. And she saw a bunch of weird lights. Like, she said it looked like laser lights, like kind of just all over like that. And she didn't know what it was. And then she asked Bill and Lawrence what the lights were, and they didn't see them. But she said at the same time she said that to them, both Bill and Lawrence were like, ooh, I don't like it in here. And they all ran the fuck out. You know what I mean? They said they just felt something in there and they did not like it. So they didn't see the lights though, but she said she did. Now, another apparition that Bill saw, and he didn't say this until a little bit later because he had a thing where, he wouldn't go in the kitchen for a long time for a couple of reasons. But he was in the kitchen one day or evening, cutting some carrots or doing whatever. And he said that he felt something behind him. He knew something was back there. And he's like, and I knew that I shouldn't turn around and look at it. He said, because the overwhelming sensation was one of temptation. That's what he said. And so he really didn't want to look at it, but he kind of did anyway. Like, he kind of turned around and looked. And he saw a woman standing there. And he's like, it was this beautiful, beautiful like the most beautiful woman ever. And she was just like standing there. And he's like, she didn't say anything. She didn't beckon to him or nothing, but she just like looked at him and then turned around and like started walking out. And he said, and I got the impression that she wanted me to follow her. And he's like, oh, fucking no. Like, because that would be...
It's a trap.
Really bad. Yeah. He's like, that would be really... He's essentially saying it's kind of like a succubus, I guess. But he said he just had a really bad feeling that if he did follow her, like, something really, really bad would happen. So he was able to not do that. I think he only saw her one time, as far as I'm aware. But, you know, so make of that what you will. There was no... I was thinking about this because I was thinking, oh, there was a succubus in this. But I was like, there was no pig rape in this one like there was in that other case that we talked about.
I don't remember.
You remember that one where he said where they were like running down the street getting butthorked by ghosts?
Oh, yeah, that was...
the Snedekers.
Snedekers, yeah.
Which they left out of both the Paranormal Witness and the Haunting episodes that they did about them.
Sodomized.
Yeah, which I was like...
Yeah.
If that really happened, that's terrible. But I'm sure it was like really funny to watch. I mean,
yeah,
I can imagine what that looked like.
Stories.
And that's the thing. It's just kind of like, I wish I'd made that up. That sounds pretty awesome.
Jenny thinks that's awesome.
No, I'm just saying that I'm like, I wish I had thought of that for like a story. You know what I mean? It's like I don't even think I could think of something like that. You're running down the street.
I think Snedekers made up a lot of that shit.
Although I will note that a story I wrote a long time ago did have a medium getting raped by the ghost of her dead husband. So there was that. So that's kind of the same. Except she wasn't running down the street, though, because that would just be ridiculous.
The Snedeker case is kind of like 5 or 6 stories.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Gilded Age Phoenix said, I usually don't go in the kitchen because I'm lazy and don't want to cook or clean. Yeah, I feel you. It also says, succubus reminds me of my last girlfriend. Memories. Yeah. That's kind of what I don't know. I thought that was kind of funny that woman came in there and he was just kind of like, he's like, nope, not going there. Yeah. So at this point, like I said, they're all seeing apparitions. All of this noise is still going on. Liz has been pushed down in the tub. All this kind of shit. There was a quote. I have a quote from Liz where she said, it felt dangerous in the house. The kids always slept with me. I wouldn't let them sleep on their own. And they started feeling really threatened. Now, another thing that started happening, and this started happening fairly early on in the haunting, was that the teenage kid, Lawrence, and you kind of saw this in the Snedeker case too, now that I'm thinking about it, became super withdrawn and like surly. And this started happening like right around spring, summer 1990. So about a year after they moved in. And Bill was saying it's like, you know, some of that, yeah, it could be attributed to, you know, just being a teenage boy because they're kind of dicks, you know, and all of the upheaval that his life had gone through. But he's like, you know, he was always a pretty nice kid. You know, he didn't really have, he was like, yeah, he was a little irritable sometimes like all teenagers, but he wasn't like this. This kid was basically like, you know, like the kid in the Snedeker case. He was just staying in his room all the time, blaring horror movies like on the TV. He wouldn't talk to anybody. You know, he just kind of stomped past everybody and went in his room. If you tried to talk to him, he just said fuck off, or he'd spit in your face, shit like that. And Bill was saying that a lot of times too, like when he talked, it wasn't his voice. Like he didn't really think that it was his son anymore. He was kind of implying that he was maybe getting possessed. His quote was, he was spitting at me, he was swearing at me, it was not him. I can't stress that enough. Another thing that Lawrence did was he painted his room bright red, although that didn't seem like all that weird to me. Because I guess what it was, they were trying to make him feel like, it's like, oh, we want this to be your home too, blah, blah, blah. So Bill gave him a bunch of money to go get paint so he could paint his room whatever color. And then he wouldn't show them it when it was done. But when he left the house, they went up there and looked, and they said it was like it was all blood red. You know what I mean? Which I was like, well, that's our bedroom used to be that color, like at our old house, so I'm not really that alarmed about it. But yeah. And also when Bill's mother, so Lawrence's grandmother, came to the house, and they were like, you know, he's being, we don't even know what the fuck is wrong with him. He's like acting like not like him. And she's like, well, I'll talk to him. And so, and they had always got along before. So she goes up and tries to talk to him. And he basically also told her to fuck off and spit in his grandma's face too. So that's nice. And he also completely trashed his room, punched holes in the walls, all this other kind of shit. Now, at some stage, like after they'd kind of determined that, you know, this is paranormal and something is going on with this kid, he mentioned it to one of the mediums or one of the paranormal investigators or something, or priests that they were talking to, because they talked to a lot of those kind of people, like over the course of the time that they lived there. And a lot of them said, you need to get him out of the house immediately. And they were like, that probably won't make the manifestations go away, but it'll be better for him. Like, so he just does not need to be in this house anymore.
That's nice.
Yeah. So, huh?
When's Maurice Gross going to show up to this?
Well, like I said, I'm only mentioned. He's only mentioned. It's not like a big, huge thing.
Big deal.
Right. But I'm just saying, I thought it was interesting that was mentioned, that he was one of the people that came in and investigated. But yeah, so finally, like after the kid has just become like unmanageable, and so at last Bill is like, okay, maybe they're right, maybe we should get him out of here, because he's just obviously not happy here and he's making our life miserable too, and it's just like this whole pall of like negative energy. So there's that. So they sent him away. I'm seeing like different sources. One said that he just went to stay in a flat. I don't know if he went to live with his biological mother. Thank you. One source I said they sent him to a boarding school. I don't know if that's the case. Most of the other ones said that they just sent him off to like live in another flat or another town. And I'm presuming he went and lived with relatives or with his biological mom or whatever. And he was pissed off, obviously, because he thought, oh, well, you guys have a new baby now, so I'm being shunted out of the family, is how he felt, I guess. But once he was out of the house, they said that his behavior improved a lot, and that after a little while, like him and Bill and Liz like were able to kind of reconcile, and everything was okay again. Now, as this haunting went on, Bill was also starting to exhibit behavior that was not like him. So that was like affecting him as well. Now, as I said, his work had started to suffer. All his commissions had dried up. He didn't really seem to be able to work anymore. And that was bumming him out, because that was just kind of like his only outlet, you know, like from all of this bullshit that was going on around him with this house. And he woke up one morning with these inexplicable, like, weeping sores, like, all over his fingers. And he went to a doctor. They gave him ointments. Like, he tried all these different treatments and stuff like that, but nothing worked. And he couldn't paint with his hands like that. So it essentially, like, crippled him and took away his ability to paint. And it kind of like would come and go. Like he would wake up with it suddenly and he'd have it for a few days or a few weeks or whatever, and it wouldn't go away, and it would just keep getting worse, and it was just seeping blood and everything, and then he'd wake up and it was gone, you know what I mean? But then it would come back like later on, he said. Also, and this is a pretty common thing that you see in these types of cases, his paintings before had been like super colorful and everything like that. Now they started getting all, you know, dark and occulty and shit like that, as he kind of started getting more into the occult as time went on. Now, right around this time period, he had a neighbor named Wynn Thomas who lived in the next farm, you know, like a half mile away or something. And when the family had first moved in, this guy was pretty crotchety about it. He didn't really want, I don't know if he didn't like them or he just was just, you know, a cranky old coot that wouldn't like anybody living there. I don't really know. But he was not shy about just like, oh, we don't really want your kind here, blah, blah, blah. It's that kind of thing. But over time, it seems like he kind of softened toward them. Could be, too, that he didn't like that Bill was English, because the Welsh and the English don't really like each other all that much. So it could have been that. But I don't know. But they had kind of become sort of friends, like, over the ensuing year or two. So when Thomas comes to him and says, tell you what, I'll give you a commission, like a painting commission. I want you to paint a portrait of my horse, whose name was Echo. So Bill is, like, happy to have it. He hasn't had any work for a long time, right? So he needs some money. So he's like, absolutely, I will do that. So he starts working on the painting. He finds this kind of field nearby. He's like, oh, it's perfect. The background is perfect. And he kind of poses the horse there and sketches it out and everything like that. But while he's working on the painting, he is having a total bitch of a time getting one of the horse's legs right. It was like the right back leg, I think. And it's like no matter how many times he tried to paint it, he's like, it just kept coming out like all misshapen and like swollen looking and shit. I mean, he just kept fucking it up, and he couldn't figure out why he was fucking it up because, you know, he'd been an artist for years and years. It's like he doesn't usually have this problem, right? So finally, after many redos, he finally gets it. He's like, okay, well, I guess that's good enough. You know what I mean? And he gives it to his neighbor, Wynn. But not too long after handing the painting over, so the story goes, the horse broke its leg, the same one that he had had so much trouble painting. Not only that, but the horse broke the leg at the same spot where Bill had posed the horse to paint it, like in that random field or whatever. And the horse ended up, they had to shoot it. You know, there was that. Now, because, like I said, in this area, from what I could gather, people thought there was something kind of fucked up about that house. And they started thinking that maybe there was some kind of curse and it was spreading. Because, like I said, prior to this, like a lot of the other people's animals, like, had started doing weird shit too. Like having deformed babies and, like, dying of weird shit. And so they were starting to think, like I said, like maybe some curse shit's, like, popped off at this farm and it's, like, spreading out to the other ones. So they were kind of not happy about it. So what ends up happening was that when Thomas, the guy that had commissioned the painting, you know, he's like, look, this fucking shit, like, you painted him right there, and it was that leg that you said was messed up, and it's like, that's exactly what happened. And he's like, fuck this noise, and he ended up burning the painting because he was not having it.
Now, whose horse was it?
It was the neighbor's horse.
And why'd the neighbors shoot it? Because the horse has broke its leg. You don't have to kill a horse.
Well, I know that, but we've had this whole discussion about,
discussion
like,
before.
well, yeah, because of that movie that had Linda Blair in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's, like, very common. You see that in Westerns all the time, but you don't actually have to.
You don't have to kill a horse because it's...
I don't know what kind of a break it was. I'm just reporting. Like I said,
right.
I don't know.
That sounds like it's made up.
I don't know.
Most people will not kill their horse over a broken leg unless they, for some reason, can't afford to fix the leg. But if you can't afford to heal a break on a leg, then you really can't afford a horse.
True.
You know?
I mean, I saw other accounts, too, that said that the horse just had something go wrong with their, like, some kind of illness or something like that.
Okay.
That, like, infection.
That's a little more...
Or something.
Yeah, that's a little more likely.
So it could be that.
Yeah, that story's not being told to us the right way.
Or it was broken and then got infected or something. You know what I mean? Like I said, I don't know.
I grew up in the horse industry, if you don't know me, people. But my mother's a pretty famous trainer. And fucking, as a little kid, I grew up showing English equestrian and hunter jumper. You don't have to kill a horse. So that was back in the cowboy days. In the field, if your fucking horse broke a leg and you were far from, you know, a town where you could get help, yeah, you did then because the horse wouldn't make it.
Yeah.
What do you do? Just walk back, abandon the horse, leave it there to be eaten by wolves or whatever, you know? No. Then they probably wouldn't. Then they'd eat it.
Yeah, I think that people still have that conception because of movies, because of Western movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't, because we were talking about it, well, like I said, that Linda Blair movie that we did, Summer of Fear, that was the name of it, that we reviewed not too long ago. And that happened too, like where the witch cursed her or whatever, and then like it made her horse break its leg, like when she was doing the jumping thing. And then they shot it.
Yeah, and I'm like,
and I'm sitting there going, why?
That's not reality.
I'm like, you don't have to do that. Yeah. Especially like a horse that costs thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah, horses have delicate legs, but they can be fixed just like any other.
Yeah, I mean,
it may not exactly ever be exactly the same.
Yeah, I mean, you probably can't race that horse or show that horse anymore, obviously.
Well, you probably couldn't race the horse, or, you know, it depends. It would take a lot of many years of recovery. You know what I mean? And a lot of people are going to be like, well, shit, I can't fucking ride the horse for 3 years. What the fuck? I'm just going to pay for the horse for 3 years, and by the time I'm done, the horse is going to be 9. Then
But if you love the horse, you
Yeah,
wouldn't
but they'll
shoot
put the horse out the pasture, sell it as a lesson horse.
it. Yeah,
But you don't kill the horse.
no.
Yeah.
That's that always really bothered me,
Yeah.
like when I was a kid, because I'd see it in movies and I'd be like, "That's fucked up."
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what kind of animal just like breaks one bone and you got to kill him over that? That's
Right.
bullshit.
Well, when that 2008 crunch here happened in Florida, my mother was here working in the horse industry, and everybody went broke overnight, and the fucking horse industry just collapsed, and a lot of horses just vanished because they couldn't take care of them, and they weren't worth anything. You couldn't sell them. Nobody could feed them. Everybody lost their jobs. So the vets put all the horses down. Sad, but that's what happened to a lot
Yeah,
of them.
that is really sad.
Yeah, nobody could afford them.
I wouldn't
feed them.
I just wouldn't be able to have. I just wouldn't
Yeah,
have the heart. I just
so-
wouldn't.
There were a lot of people like vets showing up to put down a fucking horse a week in some of these barns, and then just a few months later, 6 months later, there's no fucking horses in that barn. Yeah, and that barn goes out of business because they don't have any renters.
Yeah, because everybody owned horses for a
Yeah.
while, and then when the economy tanked.
Yeah, but those horses were loved,
Yeah.
but they put them down.
I know.
You couldn't sell them.
I wouldn't have the heart, but it's like, you know what I mean. It's like I could
can't
ne-
afford
I
to
could
feed 'em.
I could never afford to keep a horse anyway.
Yeah, and then
they're
you
massively
say, well, couldn't you
expensive.
give them away to somebody? That had already been done. Everybody who could take them was filled with horses.
Yeah.
They'd have fucking horses out in their fucking pastures. They had fucking 10 of them out there eating up the grass. They couldn't take any more. You know?
Yeah.
So there was just an excess of them. That's some shit they never told you about.
That's just
That's
sad.
what happened in 2008.
That's
It's going to
just
happen
sad.
again, too. That was the end of the horse industry around here. It's nowhere near what it used to be.
There's still a lot of
It's nowhere near what it
stuff,
was.
but it's not. like it was.
2006, 7, and before that it was fucking huge.
Yeah. Like there's still like a lot of you pass a lot of places where they do lessons like while the jumping and everything.
Yeah.
But
And it's funny because all these poor guys from Brazil that I know from Hipica Paulista and Sao Paulo Hipica, they were grooms there. Here, they moved over here to become trainers. These dudes are from the favela, no money at all, but them motherfuckers all had millionaire girlfriends now, training their horses and stuff. Don't ever fucking underestimate a Brazilian. Never underestimate them. They come here and then fucking marrying them super hot millionaire fucking girlfriends and became big famous trainers. Yeah. But they were just grooms where they came from, but they learned how to fucking train horses. Yeah. Self-made men. Never fucking underestimate a Brazilian. They got the gift of the gab. They know how to talk. They're good with women, and the ones who were in the horse industry were good traders. Yeah.
Allison says Google Louis Wayne cat paintings. Interesting. They made a movie about him. I think I know what you're talking about, but I'd have to like look that up. I definitely will look that up though. All right, so let's see, where was I? Okay, so there was that whole thing. So that whole painting, I'm assuming he still got paid for the painting.
Yeah.
But they ended up burning it because they thought it was like cursed or whatever. So again, Bill started going down the same kind of path. His mental health was really tanking. He would lock himself up in his studio. He got super interested in the occult. He had all these occult books that he would start studying. He started having these real bad mood swings. Like he'd be normal 1 second and then like just something would set him off and he would just fly into rages and shit like that. Also he started drinking a lot, which obviously did not help his mental state at all. And it was getting so bad that Liz she would take the babies and just, go stay at her mom's house for like a little while because he was so erratic and she couldn't really deal with it. And when Bill was left alone in the house, he started having, and this was another reason why he didn't want to go in the kitchen anymore, was because he started having these overwhelming urges to go in there and get a knife out of the drawer and like cut his wrist with it. You know what I mean? And he said, and he actually did it one time, like, and got the knife out, and then like it ended up like the knife ended up back in the drawer or something like that. It was like some weird kind of paranormal thing that happened. But he kept having like these obsessive thoughts about self-harm. So he was alone for a few days, and he was having all these problems and drinking and shit like that. Liz comes back with the babies. The electric has been cut off, so because I guess they went too long enough without paying it. And there's just like bills all over the floor, like shit they didn't pay. And Bill has also drawn a bunch of weird shit all over the walls, like symbols and stuff. And she said that he was just like standing there talking to himself about dead bodies walking through the house at night. That's what he was talking about, like when she got back. So he was obviously not in a good place when she returned. Now, it so happened that the neighbors, like I said, they did have some neighbors, but the houses were pretty spread apart. There weren't that many of them. One thing they did tell the family, and apparently this is true, is that the house, the farmhouse that they lived in, was actually built in the 50s. I believe it was built in 1959, but it was built on the site of a much older barn, I think. And on the property still was the ruins of an old manor house that I believe had been there since the Middle Ages. I could be wrong about that. But it was just like a ruin, and it was just like all swampy and shit like that with a few rocks sticking out. But what the neighbors told them was that, well, you know, when they built that farmhouse in the 50s, they used like pieces of that ruin and pieces of other stuff that was around here. And there was an old graveyard, because a lot of, you know, these remote houses had their own graveyard for the families and stuff. And it's like, and they used some of the gravestones to build your house. So, yeah. So like I said, that was like a very poltergeist moment for me. Like, you only move the headstones. You know, it was that kind of thing. But apparently this is true. Apparently when they were kind of digging through the foundations, they did find a couple of really, really old, like, blackened gravestones in there, like, in the walls.
You know, when they made that movie Poltergeist and they showed those dead bodies, those were real dead bodies.
That's what I've heard, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true. Maybe that's just a rumor they spread around, just like...
I think they were
but
cadavers.
they did look real, though.
I think they bought some cadavers and used them, but they didn't tell me.
Because you can buy those.
Yeah.
Although you'd think by the smell alone, or by, like... I know they can make some realistic shit, but...
Evidently, they're supposed to be real.
That's what I've heard. I've heard that too.
Evidently, some of them were
I've heard that too. I don't know if it's true, but I've heard that too.
They didn't tell the people. They didn't tell the actress.
That's a little shitty.
Yeah.
Although I guess if you did tell them, they'd be like, "I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
Get my stunt double in here."
Yeah.
And the stunt double's like, "I'm not doing it either."
They did say it smelled bad.
Well, yeah. I mean, I imagine it would.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. You'd have to pay me a lot of money to be, because she was like Jo Beth Williams in that movie. She was up close and personal with some of those when she was in there in the corpse water, in the bottom of the pool. That's some nasty ass shit. So it's like, I hope
Just think, somebody hit that afterwards. She's up in that corpse water, and then she got up in bed with her man. Ooh, man.
Hopefully she took a bleach shower.
Yeah. It's
That's...
better. Falling in that corpse water with that, in her nightie and shit. Wasn't she in her nightie?
She was just wearing
in her fucking pajamas.
Yeah, like she was just like wearing a little t-shirt and like little shorts or something that she'd been sleeping. Because remember, she just got out of the tub because she was dyeing her hair or whatever.
Yeah.
And then she went out there and fell in the...
Yeah, that was the mom though, right?
Yeah, that was the mom. Yeah, because remember the daughter was away.
Yeah, that's right. She didn't fall in the corpse water.
No, the mom did.
Yeah.
Yeesh. That is pretty gross. Yeah, it's like, what if those were real dead bodies? Yeah, because she got to go home.
Yeah.
Afterward, like after the acting day is done.
Yeah.
And she's like,
I got laid.
You smell like a morgue.
Yeah.
Well, not if she smelled like a morgue. She didn't. Unless her husband was into it. I don't know. That's terrible. Yeah. So they had found out that from the neighbors that their house may have some disturbed gravestones from an old graveyard that had been used to build the house. Because why not? It was a stone and it was laying there. Nobody was using it. Also, I thought this was kind of interesting. This was in the book. Because they started wondering about... because before the shit got really bad, they did what I guess a lot of people would do when they start experiencing paranormal activity. They're just kind of like, well, we're going to contact people that used to live here to see if they had anything go, just so we know we're not nuts or whatever. So they started... they went to the landlord because they were just renting, and he gave them the addresses of the a couple people that had lived there before them. Now, the woman that had lived there before them, whose name was, I wrote that down, Bridget Buscombe. Now, she had lived there for 7 years, just prior to them moving in. She moved in 1982 and moved out in 1989. And she told them that she never experienced anything there. She said the only weird thing she ever saw was that she was sitting in her room one time in the bedroom, and she had like a spinning wheel. And she said, and it started spinning around by itself, which she thought was like really weird. But she's like, other than that, she didn't experience anything. However, the older woman that lived there prior to that, like in the 60s, whose name was, like I said, Marion Holcomb. She was the one who, the old lady that was supposedly haunting the house when the rich family was there. This is the old lady that they thought that it was because it looked like her. When she lived there, and they heard this from a tradesman, what had happened was that the rich family, they had some problems with their, the toilet, like in the bathroom. They said it would look like, they said this is what it looked like. It looked like somebody was underneath the bathroom floor pushing up, like under the toilet to try to get out. Like the tile would come up and like the toilet would come unseated. And this happened, and they call like a plumber or a tradesman or whatever. And by the time that guy got out there, the toilet was fine again. And so Bill's like, I don't know what the fuck happened. He was like explaining what was going on. And the tradesman says to him, he's like, man, I am sick of coming out to this house. And Bill's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, that Marion Holcomb, when she lived here back in the 60s, he's like, I came in here and I installed all new radiators, like all around the house. And me and my crew did it, and we did a good job, and blah, blah, blah. And we went home, and it was the end of the day. The next day, we get a phone call from her, and she says, all of the radiators have popped off the walls and are laying on the floor. And he's like, I don't see how that could have happened, but okay. So he goes back there, and sure enough, every single one of them has been like wrenched out of the wall. And he's like, okay, I'm pretty sure we did a good job. I don't know why that happened, but I'll put them all back for you. So he put them all back. And he put them all back, and then the next day she calls again, and she's like, it happened again. And he's like, he went back there like a whole bunch of times. And finally, and like I said, I don't know if this is true, but the tradesman told Bill that the only reason that it stopped was Big Head. He started thinking it was paranormal, obviously. So he used screws that had like little crosses in the top, and he put those in there, and he's like, and it didn't do it after that. But he had to come out like 6 times because he's like, they just kept popping out the walls. And he's like, and I couldn't figure out how like every single one of them, he would come there and they'd just all be on the floor. And he's like, and this old lady wasn't wrenching them out of the walls. You know what I mean? So there's that. I'm just saying, that's what the guy said. Now, so like I said, so at this point they didn't really know. I guess there was an article about them in the paper in 1995, and this might have contributed. But they said that people would just, like mediums and spiritualists and whoever, Wiccans or whatever, would just turn up at their house. They said it got to a point where people just turn up like uninvited and be like, oh, we heard you're having some problems, or I had a dream about this place, or some shit like that. And it's just like, maybe we can help you. And they were like, we were so desperate that we were like, okay, whatever, just like come in and do something, like just anything that will fix it. So it's like, so they're getting all kind of like fucking people wandering in and out of the property. So, so I didn't really go too much into that because, there was all these people, the psychics were showing up saying this, that, and the other thing. Some of the stuff that they said did turn out to be true, but they might have researched that prior, you know what I mean? So like I said, Maurice Grosse, who, if you are not familiar with the show, or if you're not familiar with him, he was actually one of the main investigators on the Enfield case. He actually did come out to investigate this briefly. I don't know how long he was there. All that I know about his visit was that he seemed to think that it was some entity, not a demon, but something that had been conjured up a long time ago, like by somebody on the property, and like not put back. And that's what was causing all of the manifestations. That's what I heard that he said, but I don't know.
Like a golem.
Yeah, although more like I said, like an ancient Celtic deity or something. Yeah. So they even had, apparently in the UK, there's a very famous ghost hunter guy named Eddie Burks, who got famous when he went to this bank vault what they call I guess it's coots is I guess what they call it, which is called the Queen's Bank. And I guess there was like a ghost in there of like a headless spirit or whatever, and he went in there and got it out of there. So it was very much a Ghostbusters kind of situation, and he kind of got famous after that. So, and I guess a lot of people had seen this entity, and he got rid of it. So there was that. So he came out to the house too. But like I said, all of these kind of people said all different kind of stuff, and I didn't really I just kind of took it all with a grain of salt. Now, one thing that is almost certainly true about this area is that there is a long tradition of witchcraft, paganism, whatever you're going to call it, in this area. And that possibly covens had met here in the past, or as I said, had summoned various deities on this property. The thing about it is that one thing that I read that I thought was really interesting, this was an article that I found. I can't remember, it might have been in Wales Online or something. But there was a journalist named Danny Robbins, and he said, really interestingly, Wales didn't persecute witches in the way that other parts of the country did. Witchcraft flourished here, really. So there were loads of rumors of rituals having taken place on this site. And like I said, these rumors go back like hundreds and hundreds of years. So it's not like this is a real new thing. But I thought that was interesting because I'd never really thought about it. Because I was like, yeah, you never really hear about Welsh witch trials, do you? And because the Brecon Beacons is such a kind of remote area in some ways, there might have been all kind of shenanigans going on out there. And not so much Satanism or anything like that, but maybe just like, or like Wiccans nowadays. Or one anthropologist was saying too, it's like you have to think that, when the Christians take over an area, everything that's not Christian is witchcraft, you know what I mean? So it's like it could have just been completely innocuous shit, but so there's that too. Now, one thing that's interesting, like I said, Bill, the dad, he has kind of a colorful life. Let's put it that way. So when they were talking about witchcraft in the area, they were actually kind of interested in that, but they were more interested in Bill's history with witchcraft. Because it turned out that back in the 1960s, I think it was his college roommate or something like that, he actually became an initiate, which is, somebody that's getting into the coven or whatever. Now, the initiation ritual that he was at, that he was going to be initiated into the coven, was kind of headed up by Alex and Maxine Sanders, who at the time were king and queen of the witches. This was very big in the 60s, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of people were getting into, like, witchcraft and Satanism and stuff like that. So I'm not saying this means anything necessarily. I'm just saying that he was kind of into this back in the 60s. So they said, though, that what happened, and they asked Maxine Sanders about this, was that, yeah, he did come to the initiation. They started the ceremony, but he chickened out. Like, he decided he didn't want to do it, and he left. And she's like, so that's why I remember it, because he walked out before it was over. So some people have thought, oh, well, maybe that's kind of stirring some shit up, or whatever. Here's another weird thing about Bill. This is crazy. You would think you were making this up, but I guess this is true. So Bill, he seemed kind of like one of those free spirit kind of dudes, where it's like he didn't really know what he wanted to do, and he kind of drifted here and there and moved here and there, and he didn't really want to have like a regular life, you know what I mean? And at some point he joined the Navy, and he was in there for a little bit, and then he decided, well, this isn't for me, because like I said, he wasn't real into regimented shit. So he went AWOL, and he went to Borneo and lived with a tribe of headhunters, which I was like, that's insane. Yeah. That's insane. So he went and lived. He's like, they weren't really like headhunters. They had been headhunters in the past. They didn't really do it that much. Well, that much. I don't think they really did it anymore. But there was like a tradition of headhunting. So there was that. And they were speculating that the people that he lived with, one of their big things, like one of their big beliefs, was that a lot of their gods, they got like a lot of divination from their gods from birds, like watching bird behavior and stuff. And like I said, Bill was also fascinated by Egyptian mythology and that kind of stuff, which might explain why he was seeing something that looked like Horus in the house. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, so running off and living with a tribe of headhunters, That's pretty crazy. And he also, I think he went to Australia and lived with some Aborigines too for a little while. Because like his art, I saw a couple of his paintings actually, which were kind of cool. But he did kind of like, he does kind of like primitive-ish looking art, I guess you would call it. Primitive surrealism or something, I think he called it. So he lived with Aborigines and stuff. He did get caught. Like, I guess he was living with the headhunters for a little while, and then like the Navy caught him and they brought him back, and he got court-martialed. So there was that. So that was kind of a whole thing. So like I said, they were kind of going into stuff in Bill's past that could have either, if you believe in paranormal stuff, could have either attracted these entities to him, or if you believe in a psychological explanation, could have, you know, maybe he's just a type of person that's prone to this type of belief. You know what I'm saying? So it could go either way. So that's kind of why this was brought up. Also, there are a couple things that happen on the property other than the possible witchcraft that they found out that maybe had something to do with something. So in the area right near the house, there's a bridge that people that live around there won't cross it because there was a murder that took place on it. Like, there was a farmer that, not at that farm, but at one of the neighboring ones, and his wife killed him. And she actually blamed another worker on the farm, and that dude got hanged for the murder. And that was, I think, in the 1700s. And then there was another murder that happened right in this area. This happened in 1848, and apparently this is really true. So it was a guy named James Griffiths, who was 18 years old. And he worked on this farm, and he bludgeoned another farm worker whose name was Thomas Edwards, who was 23, to death with an axe, and then buried him at the next farm over. Although some people say it was, you know, on the land of Heol Fanog. So now a story that I've heard, I don't know if it's true or not, because nobody really knew at the time what the motive for the murder was. Like, that was like why they were friends. Like, why did he all of a sudden just axe him in the head? One story that I've heard, this kind of sounds like bullshit though, is that I guess the one that had killed the guy saw like some Satanist shit happening, and then the cult told him, well, you have to kill your best friend. Or was it the other way around? Like, maybe maybe the guy that got killed saw the shit, and so they said, well, you have to kill him, like, so he doesn't, like, squeal on us or whatever. Like I said, I don't know. They don't know what that murder did happen, but they're not sure what the motive is. But I did hear that it was like a satanic cult thing, but I don't know if I believe that or not. Because that's always
always popping up.
Yeah. So I just think maybe they just got in a fight about some dumb shit like dudes do, and then one just popped the other in the axe because it was there. You know what I mean? Because they were mad. I mean, they're young. So
it's always Satanists. They drew a pentagram. Okay. and Indian burial ground.
Yeah.
Indian burial ground.
Well, obviously that wasn't the case here because, but we did have Celtic stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not really the same thing, but it's kind
Indian burial ground. I love that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least they've mostly stopped doing that now.
Yeah.
But I feel like that was like a big thing that they put in movies and in
once
haunting
it was
stories.
in Poltergeist, that was it. They couldn't do it again.
Yeah, because that was like super high profile,
Right.
and it's like, and then even if you hadn't heard it before,
Yeah.
which I had heard it before, but even if you hadn't heard it before, you couldn't do it because then everybody would think you were ripping
like
off Poltergeist.
Yeah.
Right. So you couldn't do it then.
Poltergeist was ripping it off. It was always out in California, man. Fucking before Poltergeist, everybody was Indian burial ground. Always.
And that's the dumb thing is, it's like you can't really refute that because it's like, well, it's probably everywhere. It's like an Indian burial ground at some point. You know what I mean? Like most places.
Most people have died everywhere.
That's what I'm saying. It's like you could kind of say that about everywhere. Oh, so many people died here. I'm like, yeah, just like everywhere else on Earth, pretty much. Yeah. Other than places where nobody lives, like Antarctica and shit. Yeah. Like any place that has any kind of long history of population density, yeah, there's dead people all over the fucking place.
Yep.
There's cemeteries you didn't remember.
If you're in a European city, you're basically in a graveyard. Mm-hmm. There's fucking dead people all over the place.
Yeah, you're just walking all over. There's just layers and layers of dead people.
Especially Italy.
I'm surprised it's not even more haunted.
Italy and France.
Yeah.
Paris and shit.
Just bodies and bodies. So yeah. So it's kind of the same thing. Whenever it's an easy thing to say, and it's like you can't really refute it necessarily because it's so common. You know what I mean? But because it's so common, you're like, well, why would that cause a haunting when it's not causing it every other place? You know what I'm saying? So yeah. So there were some murders that happened on this property. The guy that killed the guy, like with the axe, he got hanged in Brecon in 1849, and he was buried in the churchyard nearby. So, like I said, apparently that did really happen. And I was thinking too that it's interesting that they reported seeing an apparition of a young man with his head bashed in. I don't know if they knew about this murder before they said that, but if it was ghosts, which, like I said, I don't believe that really, but they could point to, oh, that's who it was. That was the victim of the murder. You know what I mean? Because a lot of the psychics that came in said, oh, well, the house is haunted by the victim and the murderer. Like, they can't leave. You know what I mean? So there's that. But they did see an apparition of a guy with his head bashed in. Now, so as I said, this place was exorcised, as Liz put it, hundreds of times. The most exorcised house in the UK, as far as they know. Like, it's had that many exorcisms on it. And so after all of that, it did seem, all of the exorcisms and all of the shit that they did in the house with all the mediums and stuff, it did seem to help. You know, while the phenomena did seem pretty ongoing, like over the 6-7 years they lived there, it did seem to diminish somewhat, like the more exorcisms and shit they did, right? So it had kind of gotten a lot better by the time 1996-ish rolled around. But even though it was better, at this stage, the rich family were like, fuck it. They couldn't really take it anymore. Like I said, they had 3 kids by this point, and then they also had the 14-year-old. And it, living there also kind of ruined their marriage, because Bill just turned into a crazy person, and he became a drunk, and you know, had all these mental problems and stuff like that. So they actually ended up breaking up for shortly after they moved out, and Bill actually ended up dying, I believe, from complications from his drinking, although I'm not entirely sure if that's the case. So I don't know if it was like cirrhosis of the liver or something like that. I've heard that, but I'm not sure if that's the case, so please forgive me if that's wrong.
How old was he when he died?
I'm not
60s?
sure. He was actually 43 when they moved in.
All right.
In 1989.
So he died in his 50s.
And yeah, I think it was just in his 50s.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I was trying to find out what year he died, because like they moved out, I think in 1996. And then pretty much everything that I saw said that it's, oh, he died sometime later. I'm like, well, how long later?
Yeah.
Like 3 months later?
Just something
5
like
years later?
Yeah.
What are we talking about? And I couldn't really find like what date he had died. Maybe I just didn't look hard enough, but I couldn't find, but I don't know. But they did say that he died like young. So I'm assuming he was just like in his 50s. Now, interestingly, like I said, somebody else lives in the property now and has lived there for 25 years and has reported absolutely no paranormal activity. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what they said. Now, somebody mentioned at the beginning of the show that they had read a piece in 40 Times about this, and I also read that same exact piece, which was actually very interesting. And it was by a psychologist named Kieran O'Keefe, who was writing from a skeptical point of view. Like, he gave a breakdown of the case, what happened in it. Like, he gave a breakdown of, like, you know, everybody's history and stuff like that. And then he was trying to come up with, well, from a skeptical point of view, what could we be talking about here? Like, what are some rational explanations for some of the stuff that they saw? One of the things, obviously, that he said was, very commonly reported was that sulfur smell that they smelled all the time. It's like, well, that's not, they said, yeah, it would appear and disappear like really quickly, but he's like, that could be lots of things.
Gas.
That could be, gas, backup of pipes, that could be lots of different things.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't that, maybe it was, and they did say it was weird and stuff, but it's like that could be pretty easily explained.
Eating too many eggs.
Yeah.
Hard-boiled eggs.
Maybe that's what it was.
That's that kind of gas I was talking about.
See, that's what you should start doing when you rip a really bad one. You should just be like, oh man, this shit's
Ghosts,
haunted.
yeah, paranormal shit.
Yeah, just blame it on ghosts.
Yeah.
That's what you gotta do.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what was happening.
Instead of blaming it on the cat.
Well, you could blame it on the cat too. Although I'm gonna say that Bambi,
Yeah.
man, she farted on me the other day. Not in my face, at least, but she flopped over and I was petting her, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh.
Yeah.
They're pretty good about that. I think Pookie farted in your face one time.
Yeah.
Like
sitting in the bed
deliberately.
whoa. Damn. She looked at me like, what?
That's right, bitch.
They don't think anything of it.
No, they just probably think it's funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're pretty good about that. They're not real stinky, but yeah, Bambi did fart on me the other day.
Ridiculous.
And I was just kind of like, oh, dude. But I did not think it was paranormal. I was just, you know what I mean? I just thought it was the cat. I thought this was very interesting because this had never occurred to me. So remember how I said that a bunch of their farm animals, and pets and stuff, like started either had mysterious illnesses and, you know, dying and stuff, or they started acting crazy? He said, you know what might cause that? Or what that might be attributable to? Chernobyl. And I was like, what? And this is a quote from the article. It's not always remembered today, but Welsh farms suffered significantly as a result of the Chernobyl disaster in 1986. Over 4,000 Welsh farms at the time were affected and placed under strict radiation monitoring restrictions. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, at its peak, over 23,000 sheep failed the radioactive tests, and there were reports of deformed births, illnesses, and deaths. The perceived mysterious blight hitting the local animals would have exacerbated already existing psychological factors, such as interplay between stress, fear, and lack of sleep. Yeah, because that's another thing, too, is that they kept having babies, right? Mm-hmm. Like, they had a baby in October of 1989, they had another baby in 1990, and then they had another baby in 1994. So, you know, if you have babies, that they keep you awake all the time. So that might have also contributed to their mental state, perhaps. And I'm not saying that they're making all of this up, you know. I'm just saying that a lot of this, because one of the things that Tom always says is that in his case, you know, his paranormal case, it was kind of a conglomeration of stresses, perhaps, and the interplay of the people involved that might have kicked off the shit.
Yeah.
So it could be the case here. So I'm not discounting, I'm just saying that maybe if this was paranormal, it might have been kicked off because other people haven't really, you know, other than the old ladies with the radiators and stuff like that, like nobody else that's lived in this house has really reported anything even approaching this magnitude.
The problem with that is that if it involves people, it's poltergeist. And this doesn't sound like a poltergeist case. Because it's just apparitions and sounds. Poltergeist is mostly moving objects.
Yeah,
objects moving, and they're like teleporting.
Yeah, which I don't think you really saw that in this. It was mostly sounds.
And it's not real, there's no plot to it or no rhyme or reason. You just turn around and there's a stack of books in the middle of the floor, you know. You put the books away and then you look back and there's a stack of fucking cups or something, you know. And it's faster than you could fucking blink an eye. There's just another stack of objects there. They'd come from another part of the house, like, you know, like downstairs or something, and you're like, well, how the hell did they get there? They didn't pass me. They would have had to come up the stairs and go down the hallway and pass in front of me and go behind me and be there, you know. How did they get there? Did they come up through the ceiling, or did they come up through the floor? Did they teleport? I assumed they teleported most of the time. But you never could really catch it in the act.
I mean, really the only thing... Well, this does have some similarities with other poltergeist cases in the sense that you have, like, disembodied sounds. You know, pianos, breathing, snoring, doors slamming when the door isn't moving, shit like that. And you do have the energy draining issue.
Yeah. It's just if it's poltergeist, it's atypical.
But there were a lot of
there's no
apparitions in this.
Yeah.
And you don't see that. You do see it in poltergeist cases sometimes. I've written about a couple, but
It's a lot more rare.
I
didn't see
mean,
any.
yeah, no. And really, the closest thing to an apparition you saw was that blue haze
Like a
thing,
haze.
which you
and-
could kind of see it, but it was like an amorphous.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a being.
And round spheres up in the corners, like it was looking at you. But then you'd be like, "Do you see that?" You go, "Yeah, kinda." You gotta look at. If you look to the side of it, you can kind of see it, and then it would vanish. You know, it's like I think it's gone. Yeah, it's not there anymore. Yeah, you'd be because you'd be being red. You're trying to agree if it's there, you know, if it's not there. But you can definitely see blue, like a bluish haze. If you focused directly on it, you couldn't see it. You had to kind of look sideways. You kind of had to relax your eyes to see it. It's weird. It's like cigarette smoke, but not really. It was weird.
I mean, this one
There wasn't any apparitions of human forms or anything.
I mean, this one they both very clearly claim to have seen. And Liz said actually one time that she went into the nursery to check on the baby, and she saw the woman sitting in a chair next to the crib. Like, she said she just saw her for a second or two, and then she blinked and she was gone. But she's like, she saw her very clearly. And actually one time when she was coming up to the house from outside, she said she saw her standing in the window very, very clearly. So it could be that. I mean, like I said, I just thought of you know, we did the haunting in Florida that happened in Deltona, right, with Ed Dunham.
Yeah.
And that was one thing that he always insisted on, was that he got up and he saw a man sitting on a bed in the room as he passed by, like smoking a cigar or whatever.
Yeah, smoking a cigar, looking at it.
And he just said it looked like a dude, like sitting there, but he wasn't there.
He was wet.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I was thinking of. And that seemed kind of poltergeisty to me too, but...
Yeah, I don't think it's poltergeist, though.
But...
Yeah. I think it was haunting.
Yeah.
What had done him. But he had kids that were the right age for poltergeist, so maybe, you know, could be that if you have a kid that normally would be a poltergeist focus, if he's in an area where a haunting could happen, the two phenomena might merge, where it's a ghost hijacking a poltergeist phenomenon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, that's the thing. I don't think anybody knows, because
theoretical.
nobody's really an expert in this field, really. SideQuest here makes a very good point. She says, can't radiation sickness cause delirium? I mean, if they were drinking the water and walking around in the tree and fields, it also causes damage to the liver and kidneys.
Yeah, but it would probably also kill you.
Well, I don't know. Yeah. That would depend on the level, I suppose. And I mean, I didn't realize the extent, you know, how bad the radiation was in that area in the years following the Chernobyl disaster. They did move there 3 years afterward. So...
Russian guys ran into that Chernobyl reactor to help shut it down. And they said when they were in there, they were just getting bombarded by radiation. Their fucking vision got all distorted. They were immediately sick. But they got it shut down, and then they walked out and fucking laid down and died.
Yeah. But if it was just like a little bit kind of dripping on you over a long period of time, then I think that's a different issue than getting a big fucking...
Yeah. Now they ran in there and did 2 or 3, walked into the building and grabbed like a fucking rod or something and fucking pulled it out. They did what they had to do. And they told other people when they got up there what they were doing. You know, they were all in fucking suits and shit. But the guys that went down to that reactor, I think they went in there, each one of them went in there 2 or 3 times to go get shit and then bring it back out. And they were telling everybody how they felt at the time, but then they died. They died within hours.
Were they aware that that was going to kill them?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they knew they were goners. They were fucking nuclear physicists. That were going
I mean,
down
that's what I thought. I was pretty sure
yeah,
that they were aware that...
Yeah, they knew exactly
what the outcome of that was going to be.
Yeah, they worked at the reactor. It fucking melted down because of them going through that damn test when they shouldn't have. They were just... Dude was stunting. And they went down there to shut the reactor down. They knew they were dying. But you got to look at it from their point of view. They couldn't have lived anyway.
No.
Had they not shut the reactor down, they would have died
anyway. Then they would have died anyway.
And it would have died in a bigger radius.
Right.
So they were already dead. They might as well go down there and turn the reactor off.
And help other people, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's just... But other people saw them and talked to them that lived. But, no, they said they were... They said that they said that their vision was all distorted. They could see big spots and big flashes of light as fucking shit was going through the damn rods and the cones in their eyes. Because subatomic particles were piercing them, fucking busting up their DNA.
Yikes.
And they were getting real fucking sick to their stomach and fucking throwing up.
Yeah.
Nauseous, dizzy. And they were having hallucinations towards the end, and then they died.
Yikes.
So, if you get enough hallucinations to make you delirious or have hallucinations, you're going to die. Like soon.
Well, now I'm kind of wondering because, like I said, the dad in this, he did die.
Yeah.
Not long after they moved out. Now, Liz is still alive, and the kids are still alive.
I wasn't radiation.
But there could be, maybe he got more exposed to it than other for whatever reason. I don't really know.
You have to go down there to the Geiger counter to fucking prove it, but I think it wouldn't have been just him. It would have been a bunch of other people.
Yeah, maybe so. The animals did seem affected, but that might not have been that. It's just that that didn't occur to me that it would have been that bad that far away. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, because I never remember hearing that before, so I thought that was really interesting. SideQuest Hero says the HBO show on that, Chernobyl, is really, really good. Worth a watch. Yeah, I've heard that. I haven't seen it yet, but I have heard it's really, really good. So I don't know. Like I said, there's lots of different... Again, there's also, like, some kind of, earthquake activity in that area, too, which, like I said, a lot of times people talk about, when they're talking about reasonable explanations for people seeing apparitions and things of that nature, which might be the case here because, like you said, in your case, it couldn't have been any other explanation because shit was moving around, like, in impossible ways. You didn't really see that in this one.
It didn't matter where I was.
Right. This one was apparitions. This was weird power drains, weird noises, like, stuff like that. So some of that could have been caused by... And the noises, not everybody heard them every time, So there's a possibility... Maybe there's some kind of environmental factor that was affecting their minds somehow,
More likely it would be some kind of atypical poltergeist phenomenon.
Possible. This has similarities to, like, a lot of other cases. I don't know really why they call it the Welsh Amityville. I guess just because of the red room thing and the even though that didn't
because it's not like Amityville.
It's not really like Amityville at all. And it to me it came off more like the apparition thing. Kind of seems like somebody mentioned the Black Monk of Pontefract case, which he said you can rent that out as an Airbnb. Even though it's still haunted and use ghost hunt. Oh, that'd be cool. If I could afford it, I would like to go over there and rent that. That would be awesome. I wrote about that case. I think we did a show on it like a long time ago. SideQuest Hero says earthquake weather. Animals act weird and it gets real still. Yeah, but so I'm not really sure. I don't know. Like, I listened to interviews with. I read interviews by Bill because obviously he's passed away. But I saw interviews with Liz and also with Becca, who is the daughter. Obviously, she's kind of grown now. And they didn't come across as hoaxers, necessarily. So either the shit really happened, or they perceived that it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
sometimes I think, like, when we do cases on a haunting and stuff like that, it's like sometimes the people seem really sincere. I don't really think most of the people are making it up. Sometimes I think people are exaggerating, and not on purpose either. Like, sometimes I think some people are just more fantasy prone or more dramatic or whatever, and it's like they're going to take something that's not a big deal and, like, blow it into a big thing because they're already primed to believe that kind of stuff, and it doesn't seem like they're making stuff up to them. I don't know how I feel about this, though, because this seemed like a lot of, like, pretty extreme phenomena. Not as extreme as some other ones that we've talked about, but I don't know. They did see a lot of apparitions. They did hear a lot of noises, stuff like that, and it was multiple people that had it, so I don't know. I'm not really sure where I stand on it. What do you think, Tom?
I don't know. I basically already said it's probably some kind of atypical poltergeist type phenomenon.
I mean, the kid was the right age.
Yeah, one that doesn't involve much movement of objects, just more like sounds.
And the kids seemed to be affected a lot.
Yeah.
By it. Everybody was affected by it, but the one thing about it though was that when they got the kid out of the house, when they sent him away, as far as I know, the phenomena did not lessen. Like, it kind of continued the way it was.
Okay, so it didn't follow him.
It did, no, not that I know
Then
of.
it would probably be haunting.
Now, I think, and please forgive me, I think I read this. I think that slightly the phenomena did follow them to, I believe, Liz's mother's house. Like, I think, like, some kind of weird shit happened there, but nothing to the extent that happened in the house. But so I think there was, like, a tiny aspect of minor things following them when they went to, like, relatives' houses and stuff.
Haunting is location-based. Poltergeist is people-based. If it follows you, it's poltergeist. The people are generating it. If it can't follow you, then it's haunting.
Yeah.
It's a location.
Yeah. And this, like I said, you know, because of the apparitions, because the apparitions kind of corresponded to stuff that had happened on the property, you would think that it seems more like haunting, but then there were, like I said, some aspects that were like, but you know, didn't Steve Mara was talking about one case, shit, what case was that? It's right on the tip of my tongue, that he always talks about, that he said was like a combo.
Yeah, there's several of them like that. So, you know, I don't remember what they were.
It was the one British one that he was talking about.
Yeah,
it's kind of well known. Like, it's right on the tip of my tongue.
But who knows if those are real cases?
That's the thing, and it's like, that's always kind of like, I think that's always kind of like, I like doing paranormal shows, but I'm always kind of like coming at it from a place of, well, they could just be making all of this up.
Because Amityville horror, Amityville is a mixture of everything. But that case is a hoax.
Great story.
Yeah.
But I don't think any of that should happen.
No.
At all.
No, it's not just one thing. It's a haunting, and it's poltergeist, and it's fucking, possession. It's just everything.
South Shields poltergeist.
South Shields, yeah.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, I don't think South Shields was real either. I had the book. There's some shit that happened in South Shields. I was like, what the fuck? They said that a plastic table melted, but then it went back to normal. Why didn't they take a picture of it while it melted? They had cameras.
Well, see, that's another thing that kind of makes me skeptical about a lot of this kind of stuff is that, you know, back in the day, you could say, oh, this crazy thing happened, and it's like, we didn't have a camera because they didn't work like that. Nowadays, there's no excuse.
They had cell phones.
Everybody has a phone. You can film shit if shit like that happens. But the thing about it now is that we have the technology that you can fake all that shit too.
South Shields poltergeist was actually sending texts to people.
That's right. Yeah, I forgot about that aspect.
So they had phones.
Yeah.
And they made claims that they made claims that certain things happened on location, and they had phones. They didn't take pictures of it.
Which you would think that would be the first thing you would do.
Yeah.
The first thing. Well, the second thing you would think of. The first thing you would think of would be like, holy shit.
Yeah.
What the fuck is happening right now? But then the second thing you'd think would be like, I need to get a picture of this stuff. No one's gonna believe it. You know.
Even when my shit was going on, we had a Polaroid camera. We only had like eight photos.
Well, I mean, that was like 1981.
Yeah, you couldn't catch anything. You could only catch the aftermath. So I'd taken pictures of things that were on the floor and things that it had arranged. Little smiley face that it made.
Yeah, you didn't have a video camera.
Yeah, it made a smiley face out of hand towels.
Yeah.
But there was no way you could catch it in the act. It was too fast, and it did it behind your back anyway when you weren't looking.
Well, like I said, I think that's one of the things that kind of bolstered your story is because you guys have these Polaroids. I've seen them.
From 81. Taking pictures of fucking...
And you're like, why would I take pictures of
a rocking chair
this
upside
stuff?
Down. Rocking chair upside down.
If it wasn't weird.
Yeah. Pictures of the rocking chair upside down with a pillow next to it and a towel fucking draped over one of the feet. The rocking chair thing. Yeah, it was weird.
Because that's all they had was a Polaroid. Yeah. So it's like, so they have like 10 Polaroids of just like...
They're in the book.
Incongruous.
Yeah.
Shit, you know what I mean?
We took pictures because that's the only thing we could get.
That's the only thing they had.
And then we ran out of photos.
Yeah, because those Polaroid packs, they only had what, like 8-10 photos on them, something.
Yeah,
like
they were $1 a
12.
piece.
Yeah, it wasn't cheap.
Expensive back then. Yeah,
it wasn't cheap. So like I said, that should tell you something right there.
Yeah.
It's like they're not going to waste fucking film taking pictures a chair upside down.
Yeah.
If they had done it.
No.
You know what I mean? So.
What about the little smiley face on that bed?
Yeah.
Made out of the fucking hand towels.
Yeah.
That's how we found it. Weird.
Your poltergeist was.
Yeah.
That was a very.
Make
Well, I
smile.
mean, it was you, so. I
Yeah.
think you did that shit.
Yeah. Well, it was the fucking.
Without realizing it.
Yeah, subconscious ability doing it.
We haven't had any poltergeist shit happen at this house, have we?
Yeah.
Oh, a little bit.
Yeah. Had a bunch of it happen. Had fucking TV turn on in the middle of the night a couple times.
Oh, the smoke alarm.
Smoke alarms fucking going off when I was fucking freaking out.
Yeah, he made the smoke alarm go
It
off.
threw that ring. You didn't see that.
No, I didn't see that. You told me about it.
Yeah. It just did. It does stuff still. It does stuff when I'm not really paying attention to it, or if I start fucking getting freaked out. Like it was telling me my dad was dying.
Yeah, that was
That's
the weird
what the-
thing is that before
That's
he
what the
found
smoke alarm's
out,
about, yeah.
before he found out, was it the day before they called?
Yeah. No, I called the next day. And
Yeah.
he was in the hospital.
Right. It was just our smoke alarm, which I will now.
I was talking about the poltergeist when it came on
Yeah, because the smoke
We were watching the
alarm,
movie.
we had just replaced the battery.
a couple months before.
Like, yeah, weeks or months before, because it makes that chirp, chirp, chirp noise, and I was like, oh, needs a new battery. So Tom got up there and changed the battery. And then all of a sudden, it
a couple
made,
months later.
a couple months later,
Yeah, not all of a sudden. A couple months later.
it made a weird, like it was going to go off, but it just did it for a second. Beep. And then the one out in the hall did it. Beep.
Yeah, it beeped a couple times. And I was zoning out at the time because I was watching a movie. And I was listening to Jeffrey Combs talk about the powers of the mind. And
Oh, yeah, that's right. We were
Yeah.
watching The Frighteners.
Yeah, and he was saying that you did this with your mind, and it started doing it.
That scene came
Yeah.
on. And he was getting all, because it was Jeffrey Combs, like, getting
Yeah.
all into, like, talking about the
Yeah,
fucking
yeah, and it started
paranormal shit. And then but it didn't, like, it doesn't do, like, because, you know, when the smoke alarm, we've set the smoke alarm off lots of times. Like, if we, you know, something fell in the oven or something. And
Not here.
Yeah, at the other place.
Yeah.
So we know the noise that it makes. This wasn't like that. It was the same noise, but it didn't keep going. It just went.
It beeped 3 or 4 times.
It went like beep, 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 and then the one out in the hall did it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, that's fucking. And then it stopped. And then I was like, that's fucking
Stopped
weird.
on its own. And then later on that night, I woke up. I felt like I couldn't breathe.
That's right.
Yeah. And then I called my dad the next morning. He was in the hospital dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's
he couldn't
how.
breathe either.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what.
Yeah.
Because you had been having that
Yeah.
for a few times. Because you had been waking up and being like, I
Can't
can't
breathe.
breathe. And like he'd be walking around and being like, I don't know what's the matter.
I had to get up in the middle of the night and start walking around.
And start walking around.
Yeah.
And we didn't know it was wrong. But then we figured out that's what it was.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't happened since then.
Hmm.
So, pretty weird.
My dad's heart was failing.
Yeah.
He told me he couldn't catch his breath.
Yeah. And you could feel that shit.
Yeah.
Which is,
Yeah, it told me.
yeah. Was trying
Did
to.
other shit though too. You know, it was a long time ago. Pulling things down off the fucking wall. Through all the statues.
It did that when you were mad.
Yeah. She says she's like, I don't believe in that paranormal shit, but she's seen it. And then she forgets that she's seen it.
No, I didn't
kinda
forget
goes
that
in-
I've seen
yeah.
it. I'm talking about.
She felt it watching her one of these times. One time, she felt it watching her. Fucking, I know what she's talking about. Must have been when I was at my dad's house. I know. That was that same night that it threw the coins, right? It made the stack of coins, right? And through the
Kinda.
it threw the.
No, I told you that one time when the first time you went to visit your dad, when
Yeah.
he was having the bypass, like
Yeah.
however many years ago that was.
Yeah.
So you were gone for 2 weeks. And one night I was in the bathroom
Yeah.
and I felt somebody
Yeah.
behind me,
Yeah.
like
Watching you.
like touching me like that.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit freaked out, but I figured it was just you.
Yeah.
So I wasn't bothered.
Just checking.
Is
out.
that weird to say?
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, I guess he's just checking on me.
Yeah.
I think that's why when we had the whole thing happen with the remote control flying off the table and everything like that, like when
Yeah.
Jen and Dimitri were here, it didn't frighten me at all. Because I was like, I figured it was just you doing it.
Those are my Sith abilities.
Yeah.
Like something out of Star Wars. Yeah.
You just can't control them, really.
No.
It just kind of happens
No,
when
they
you're
control
not.
me.
Yeah, because it only happens when you're really, really upset or when
Yeah.
you're really like zoned out and not
Yeah.
thinking about it.
Right. So it's an outside force telling me things and doing things. And it's just like in fucking The Shining with Tony. He's the one that shows you things. It's that. Yeah. It's never
Stephen King knows
It's
what's
never
what.
you doing it by your own will. It's an outside force telling you something.
Because like you
showing
said, you
something.
can't do it. You
Or
just
do-
have to allow it.
Yeah. Or it shows you something, or it gives you a message, or it does something. You know. Or it throws something. It's always some kind of demonstration.
Yeah.
So it's not me doing it. It's it doing it to me.
Yeah, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's not like it's not a
one of
demon or a ghost or anything.
No, it's one of the facets of my subconscious. Doing it.
Right. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
So that's why it doesn't really scare me all that much. Although, like I said, I do. It is kind of in the back of my mind that if he got really pissed off at me one day, like some brick might come from somewhere and like
I'm more worried about what it might
whack me
do
in
to
the back
me.
of the head. Yeah, it would probably.
If more likely that it would do something bad to me.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah. It's like Venom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Case and Lee said Amityville is said to be a hoax concocted by the last owner and his lawyer. Yeah, I've heard
We
that as
talked
well.
about that already.
Yeah, there's like, yeah, we did a show about that a while back where it's just,
Yeah.
I mean, that was the story. They all like got drunk over a couple bottles of wine and came up with the whole thing. Well, like I said, something horrible did happen in that house, a mass murder. So you get the house for cheap and you maybe need some money. Might want to come up with something like that. Not suggesting it. I'm just saying that maybe they did. Can't really blame them, really, I guess, but I wouldn't do that. I'm not a real deceptive person like that. I'm not good at it. I'm not a good liar. I'm not anything. I wouldn't be able to keep a straight face.
All right, let's go ahead and shut it down, Jim.
All right. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed this rare paranormal episode. I had a lot of fun with this, actually, like researching this one.
I'm so worn out from the fucking car.
He's been working on the car all day. And he's been kind of tired the last few days too. Not sure why, but something. Because like this morning he was like, I don't want to get up. I know I got all this stuff to do and I don't want to get up. I was like, you got to get up. You got to do something. So he got up and he worked on the car like literally all day. Like I think he started working on the car at like 10, 11 a.m. and he didn't stop until 6:30, something like that. So yeah, he's been working on the car all day. But yeah, it's doing good. All right, so thank you everybody for stopping by this evening. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. We will be back again on Friday night for the Sidetrack show. We will probably have a guest, a friend of ours who is coming over. She's going to go out with us to Mannequins on Friday night. So she will maybe be on the show if she wants to be. If she doesn't want to be, we'll just stick her in the background. You know what I mean? It'll be up to her, but you know what I mean? She might want to be on the show. So we might have a guest, we might not on Friday night. But yeah, so hopefully you guys can join us for that. It should be fun. So we'll see you guys then. Good.